Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting this Thursday, February 7th. To start out our meeting, I would like to call Steve Martin up to guide us in the Pledge of Allegiance, should he be so amenable.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask Secretary David Gillig to call roll for us.
Good evening. Commissioner Hoopengarner? Present. Commissioner Erickson?
Present.
Commissioner Buckner?
Present.
Commissioner Bass?
Here.
Commissioner Elkshaw?
Here.
Vice Chair Carvalero?
Here.
And Chair Jones?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. I would like to ask that we shift some things around this evening. If you're going to have a conversation, could you please take it into the lobby area? Thank you. So first, I would like to propose that we move new business, item 11, up to just before our public hearings. This is so that we can also move item 10B up to our first public hearing. Commissioner Lynn Hoopengarner, I believe, needs to recuse herself from 2 of the items this evening, and I would like to make sure that she doesn't have to wait through 2 items.
Much appreciated, Chair.
Yeah, sure thing. So do I have everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. So the agenda, there's a lot happening tonight. David, I just want to make sure you have a note of the changes to the agenda.
Yes, but that's noted. We got that.
Okay, great, thank you. Item 5 is approval of the minutes from our January 17th meeting.
A motion by Commissioner Erickson, seconded by Vice Chair Carvalero. And the motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. Item 6, moving right along here, is public comment. Do we have any public speakers at this time?
We do. We have 2. Our first public speaker will be Chris Bout.
Great, thank you. Again, when you come up to the podium, if anyone's here for the first time or it's been a while, welcome. Please state your name and city of residence before you begin your comment. You will have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Chris Bowen, and I'm a resident of the city of West Hollywood. I'm here just to speak in public comment to urge you all in the audience to support Measure B. And I'm here representing the residents to preserve the Sunset Strip. And I wanted to let you know why you should vote for yes on Measure B, and why that the Norma Triangle Neighborhood Watch, the West Hollywood Heights Neighborhood Association, and the West Hollywood Chamber all support this measure. The Arts Club, was founded by Charles Dickens in 1863, and it will replace the Hustler Building and will include bistro, music, an art gallery, free rehearsal space for local singers, dancers, and performers. It will also include up to $13.5 million in community benefits. If you want to see more creativity on the Sunset Strip, please vote yes on Measure B. Thank you.
Great, thank you. James Litz.
Good evening, Commissioners. James Litz, City of West Hollywood. Round 2 of the same proposal here. I'm yes on Measure B. I'm working on the campaign as well. I wanted to thank you all as planning commissioners for approving such a great project, which will be a great fit and a great addition to the Sunset Strip. With all the additional funding for the schools and the rehearsal space, you know it's going to be a great project. I just don't want people to get confused. If you want the Arts Club to go forward, yes on Measure B. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, moving along here to item 7, which is our director's report. I'd like to call up our director, John Kehoe.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is John Kehoe, Director of Planning and Development Services. I have 3 brief items I want to talk about, mention tonight. The first is about our pedestrian enhancements on Sunset Boulevard. So some of you may have noticed there's a parklet on Sunset Boulevard next to Book Soup. There's some lively colors painted on the sidewalks, and there's some bulb outs on the street to provide for pedestrian enhancements. This is a pilot project that's going on for 6 months, and so we really would like to get some feedback on that. So we have a website where you can go to and put your comments, whether or not you support the ideas or you don't like the ideas, and whatever comments you'd like to provide us. And the location is at www.weho.org/sunsetexperience. So again, it's www.weho.org/sunsetexperience. The other item is an item that's coming up on the next City Council meeting, and that's Tuesday, February 19th, and the ZTA on the definitions of dwelling units that the Planning Commission looked at a while back is now going to be on the City Council agenda on Tuesday, the 19th. And then also just an update, I think it was at the last Planning Commission meeting, there was an item that had discussion about habitable space versus occupiable space. So we did discuss this with our building official, and the building official says that the building code defines habitable spaces as areas used for living, eating, sleeping, and cooking only. And so a lobby would be considered an occupiable space, not a habitable space. Therefore, the project at 1019 Orange Grove is in the process of revising their layout, so they will meet that definition of habitable space, occupying at least 50% of the front facade. So with that, that's all I have for my update at the moment.
Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
John, can you let us know when we'll be getting our update on the exemplary design stuff that we've been asking for quite some time now, and when we can expect that?
So it's in the works. David DeGrazia is working with, that's going to be going to the long-range subcommittee. Our urban design subcommittee, actually, that's where it's going to go, and then it will come back to the Planning Commission. I don't have the date that it's scheduled for the urban design subcommittee.
Any other
Excuse me.
questions for the director?
Urban Design Subcommittee?
The design review, sorry, design review.
I was like, new subcommittee?
No, not a new subcommittee.
So I'm going to ask the same question. We have a hearing in 30 days, and
Yes.
we were going to get surveys done.
Yes, and so we are getting a survey prepared to make sure that so that your property will be clearly identified, and we've been promised by the consultant that that survey will be here before the staff reports are released on that item. So they're working on it right now. So the
Okay, 'cause
consultants are
I
working
haven't
on it.
been contacted.
Right. Well, I don't think they need to contact you because they're using property lines and maps. They're not.
I understood there was going to be an actual survey.
Yes, they are surveying it using a system. I don't know if they're going to go out and put a mark on your property and then do a measurement from your property line to the next property line, but they have a system that they will survey the property and verify that that it is accurate. So they're not just using a map and a.
So, okay, so
Right.
is that the methodology that the city allows when doing a building?
Yes, right.
So they don't have to do an actual survey for one of these projects?
So what do you mean by a survey for?
Like when we, when we look at these plans?
So we're hiring a company that's going to certify a document, saying that they've certified the document, that it meets the distancing requirements, that they've certified that. And so just as someone would certify the plans that are in your packet, they're doing the very same certification.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the director? You're off the hook. Thank you, John. Moving on to item 8 is items from commissioners. Do we have any items from commissioners this evening? I see lots of nodding heads. Commissioner Altshuler, I'll start on the left hand of the dais.
Yes, on the March 21st agenda, we have 8760 Shoreham Drive. Both Sue and I live within 500 feet of that, and I would request that that go at the bottom of the agenda so that we can exit.
Noted. Just nudge one of us before the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Caballero, I'll just go down the line.
So our last planning commission left me a little troubled. We had two projects of similar scale, and we seemed to judge them with two completely different sets of standards. After our meeting, I went back to the code, and I researched code 19.20.030, architectural elevations. And it says, all elevations of structures on a site shall be architecturally treated in a compatible manner, including the incorporation within the side and rear elevations of some or all of the design elements used for the main facades. Parking structure shall also incorporate some or all of the design elements used for the main facade. So we had two projects during that planning commission meeting, one which completely satisfied this code and one which did not. And we seemed to judge the one that satisfied the code with a much more rigorous standard than the one that didn't. I purposely asked the architect why he didn't deal with the three elevations, and his response was, we don't see them, so it doesn't matter anyways, which I felt was not necessary. Obviously, it wasn't code compliant, and we often have people coming to the podium complaining about how they're losing views, they're losing sunlight, they're losing quality of life because a tall building's going up next to them. Wouldn't it be better if we consider upholding this code and placing buildings across from their windows that are at least nice to look at? So, for me, over the last couple of weeks, I've really been thinking about what do we value as a commission. I know over the year and a half that I've been on the commission, I hear that we desire front yards that are pedestrian friendly. That's something I think we've all kind of come organically to understand. So I bring this up only because I want us to sort of contemplate some of the values that we want to see in our buildings so that we can judge each one with fair and equal sort of points of view. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is exemplary design. So I proposed the idea of throwing out exemplary design at our last planning commission, and staff contacted me to discuss that possibility, and I've met with them this week. And I now understand that exemplary design isn't a design designation, but it really was it was a way of trying to inspire architects to create more interesting buildings by creating elevations that are well articulated, and by that they would be able to bypass the 6-foot side setback from the front yard. Unfortunately, it's sort of been now over the years, we kind of read it as a design award. And so we're working on language that might define a more quantitative approach to doing design analysis. And with the Housing Accountability Act becoming more stringent, I think it might be worthwhile us taking a look at the guidelines in the code and coming up with something that is much more definable so that we can have quality design conversations with our projects as they come through the process.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson?
I just have great news that Ivy Bottini is safely in Florida, as much as anyone could be safe in Florida. But I was able to connect with her, and she is safely in her new home. And so even though we lost an icon here, we now have a valuable blue Democrat in a swing state. So I am happy to report that. So thank you.
Thank you for that update. Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Yes, I would like to make a suggestion to staff and to this commission and to City Council that we take a look at how the mixed-use affordable housing calculations are done in the city of West Hollywood. Due to new state code, it's not clear in the state, and it leaves it to the city as to how those calculations are done. And It allows the developer to pick a number for their base number of units, which in the most recent 2 projects that have been presented to this body have resulted in a percentage of affordable housing well below our 20% threshold. When you look at the actual calculations of affordable housing provided to the units provided, on one project it's like barely 11%. And so I would like to suggest that that needs to be revisited as to how that might be calculated. I have some ideas. I did some back of the envelope stuff on how that might work. I'd be happy to work with staff if that's something that this body feels would be of interest, and if we should put it on our calendar for the next meeting or meetings.
Thank you. I don't know that that's something that we would discuss now. I think we can ruminate on it and
I'm not sure as to the exact procedure
Discuss,
about how
yeah.
that should or could happen, and whether it starts from council and goes down, or starts from long range and goes up, or
Well, maybe the best way to do it would be to put in, if a majority agrees, put an item on the next agenda to kind of unpack a little bit some of the ideas you're talking about and seeing if the commission wants to explore this further. That way you can have a Brown Act notice conversation about it and see whether it's something that we want to take to the next level of sending up to council or initiating a text amendment or talking about in long range, some of these various options, but you could do that if you put it on an agenda for a future meeting.
Would you need a motion to put it in the agenda?
Yeah, you can make a motion to put something on a future agenda.
Would you like us to do that? Can we do that now?
If there's consensus. I mean, you can also do it informally. You can give us informal directions.
I see what we have on our screens. I don't know if it's up there, but Commissioner Hooper and Gardner made a motion to add it to the next agenda, and I seconded it.
if not the next agenda, then in a time when it is, when staff we have bandwidth on our calendars coming up.
Could you
Yeah,
repeat the
it
motion,
could go
please?
on the next agenda. We're not too full, so if the commission desires, that would be a good time to do it.
Okay, that's fine.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
I would like this commission to discuss whether or not we should evaluate how mixed-use affordable housing calculations are done in the city of West Hollywood, in as much as it is discretionary and not directed by state law. And in particular, to address the issue that mixed-use housing that has resulted from the new state law has resulted in proposals that are significantly lower than our 20% threshold. That is how we require other residential properties to have a minimum of 20% affordable. That's a long way of explaining it, but that's the short of the motion.
And that request passes. It'll be put on your next agenda on February 21st for discussion.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to make one quick comment. That said, it was brought to my attention by another commissioner earlier this week that there was an updated agenda posted and that it wouldn't have been immediately obvious to the general public unless you were just a total stickler for detail that was in fact a revised agenda. So we've requested that staff call out when a new updated agenda is posted for upcoming meetings. So just a note to the public that should be flagged as such on the site. It doesn't happen super often, but wanted to let you know that that's something that's on staff's radar, and thank you.
And it was still more than 72 hours in advance of your meeting
Correct.
when the new agenda went up.
Great. So again, as per, we have item 9 is consent calendar. We don't have anything on consent calendar. So we are going to move this new business item, item 11, up to just before our public hearings.
Hello again. So this item is an item discussing subcommittees and the makeup of subcommittees of the Planning Commission and of other commissions in the city. About a month or so ago, the issue of alternates at subcommittees was raised to staff. a member of the public saw that an alternate came to the design review subcommittee and then to review an item, and then later the full subcommittee saw the item, so that made, so they noted that that meant there were 4 planning commissioners had reviewed an item. And so they raised the issue of whether or not that was a conflict with the Brown Act, as far as having a majority of the commission look at and participate in discussing an item before it came to the full commission. So this item was raised to us. It had never been raised to us before. So that got onto our radar. And then I believe it was at the last subcommittee meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee, one of the commissioners called us and said they weren't going to be able to attend that meeting. So then we thought, this might be that Brown Act issue. So we contacted the attorney's office to see what the concerns might be of having an alternate come to a subcommittee meeting. And so in discussions with the city attorney, it was determined that we shouldn't have an alternate come to a subcommittee meeting because that could ultimately lead to 4 people reviewing and participating in an item. So we didn't contact the alternate to say come to the meeting or anything. We didn't contact the alternate at all. And unfortunately, we should have contacted the alternate to let them know that we weren't calling them in. And we should have also contacted the chair to let them know that that was the case. And so that's why we're having this discussion tonight, is so that the full commission and members of the public can hear what we're talking about and how this change might impact our subcommittees. Since this item was raised, we went back to take a look at how long has the Planning Commission been officially appointing alternates to subcommittees. And Mr. Gillig looked back at many years' worth of items, of agendas, and it looks like they first appeared in 2014 when Heidi Schink was appointed as an alternate to every single subcommittee that the Planning Commission had. So it looks like it's been around for, maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that, where we've been officially appointing an alternate to subcommittees. We also checked in with the city's clerk's office to see if other commissions have standing subcommittees and if they have alternates. It looks like the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission is the only other commission that has subcommittees that are standing, and they do have alternates. The city clerk agrees with the city attorney's office that having a majority of the commission meeting at parts on an item through a subcommittee does cause conflict with the Brown Act. And so she'll be also talking to the ACAT commission about not having alternates to that one as well. So that's the background of where we got to this situation where it looks like we won't be able to have alternates anymore. And Lauren is here. I'm sure there'll be some specific questions about Brown Act meetings and that type of thing. So Lauren is obviously here to answer any of those particular legal questions.
I have a couple of questions, and I just want to make clear for the public. So again, if you're not familiar with, we have 2 subcommittees for Planning Commission. We have Long Range Planning and we have Design Review Subcommittee. And there are 3 members of this body who are appointed by the chair in agreement with the rest of the commission to those committees. And in the case heretofore that someone has not been able to attend, we have called an alternate to attend one of those meetings. So it's in the interest of being as transparent as possible that we are bringing this to everyone's attention at this particular meeting, as the alternates will not be, it sounds like, called anymore. I do have a couple of questions just as regards any potential Brown Act violations. I think specifically, my questions revolve around 2 key questions. One, if we've already seen a project as a commission and it goes back as a changed project to a design review subcommittee that is in some way different by 1 or even in maybe other case 2 people, how does that constitute a Brown Act violation? That's my first question. If it's a totally different, if it's in essence a different project. And 2, in the case that, to be clear, the criteria by which Design Review Subcommittee passes things along to Planning Commission those criteria and considerations are decidedly different than the ones that we make here as a discretionary body at Planning Commission with a formal action in terms of the way that we are, the guardrails that we have by which we're allowed to judge a project. So I guess I'm unclear as to how this would in any way be a violation.
Those are very fair questions, and I think the answer to both of them comes in the definition of what a prohibited serial meeting is, because that's what we're trying to avoid is here's the definition of a serial meeting. It says in the Brown Act, a majority of the body shall not outside a meeting use a series of communications of any kind to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. So that definition of what is a serial meeting is quite broad. So you'll notice at the end it says any item of business within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. So anything related to the project is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. And it's really any item having to do with it. I don't think we could parse out, well, you just talk about design here, so 3 people could talk about it here, and we're just talking about another piece of it here. It's the item, it's the project. And so.
But it's, even if it's a different project, because it was sent back by Planning Commission to Design Review Subcommittee, and it's going to be seen, I mean, the design would be different. I mean, I get that it would be the same item, but.
The concern is, it's almost just a math question. You have 3 people on a subcommittee, because we have a board of 7.
Sure.
And so less than a quorum can be on a standing committee, that's 3. So that means no more than 3 commission members can discuss an item outside of this room where all 7 of you are sitting and talking about it. So when an alternate comes in, you now have a 4th person, and then we have the issue of items being continued or heard more than once, coming back for additional review. So it's just too difficult to manage which 3 saw it at which meeting and when an alternate was there and when an alternate wasn't there. And so it just creates sort of an unworkable situation when you really get down into the how you process these different meetings and make sure that there's not more than 3 of you reviewing one project at a time or one matter.
Are you done? Oh, go ahead.
No, but go ahead.
So if an item's never been heard and someone has to recuse themselves or is unavailable, how is the Brown Act invoked in that scenario?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So a new project comes up and it's going to go to design review and one person can't attend or 2. How is it a Brown Act to appoint other commissioners when the body hasn't met, the item hasn't been discussed? How is there a violation?
It's any item of business within the subject matter jurisdiction of this body. So the project is going to come, it's part of the subject matter jurisdiction of this body.
So if person A, you have A, B, and C are on the commission, or on the subcommittee, and person A cannot attend, and that item has never been heard, has never been seen, there's never been a meeting,
Yes.
what is the problem with person D sitting in for person A? That will be the first time the thing has been heard, the first time it's been presented, the first time it's been discussed. Now, I can see a scenario where if that same item comes back to design review a second time, then it would simply be a matter of, these are the people that heard it the first time, these are the people that should hear it the second time, so that you don't have a Brown Act violation.
And that's the issue and the problem.
That is the issue and the problem, but I think what Commissioner Hoopen-Garner is asking, if I'm understanding, is what you're saying, it sounds like to me, is that we're eliminating alternates entirely.
Yes,
Correct?
because we're seeing that with items being continued and items coming more than one time, it's very difficult to manage when and to keep track of when an alternate was there and when just the regular 3 were there, and to prevent 4 of you from having
I
functioned
understand.
on it.
I just think it would be relatively easy to track when a project is coming back and to make sure that, there are going to be changes to the commission anyway, and to the design review subcommittee. What I don't want for anyone, whether it's for applicants, whether it's for people on commission, whether it's for members of the public, and ultimately for staff, who is, we're obviously very much concerned with things like workload and streamlining processes, that we have 3 people to see a project unless there is some overt conflict of interest. I just don't want to do away with it entirely, and I can speak for myself only when I say that I don't want to get into a situation where only 1 or 2 people from commission are present at design review to review projects. It's not fair to anyone. Commissioner Buckner.
Yes, and then there's a situation where a commissioner will have to recuse themselves from a project because of being within 500 feet. And we wouldn't be able to hear it on design review anyway. So it would seem appropriate to have someone else, another commissioner, sit in on that item, right? And in particular, John and I are both on the design review, and it could come up with a situation where a project comes within our 500 feet, and we wouldn't be able to be there, and there wouldn't be a quorum on design review to review the project. That would be unfair to the applicants.
Project that you have on Shoreham right here would be a perfect example. The one that you just announced that neither of you can attend in this commission, you would have to recuse yourselves in design review, which would leave Rogerio all in charge.
But that wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to review the project because you need at least 2 on design review.
Exactly.
We need a quorum.
So I don't think this is fair to the developers at all. It leaves a dearth of talent on the design review, and it potentially means they have to continue for weeks and months until enough people can serve on design review.
And in addition, there have been items where one member of the commission who was on design review did not see a project. When it first came to design review, it was sent back, and we recognized it, and we simply, that commissioner did not attend the second design review meeting, sent back the original commissioner who did hear it the first time, which was appropriate because then there was more continuity anyway.
And we have a very talented secretary who's very thorough and very organized. And I think he's very capable of taking very good minutes and knowing exactly who was at each meeting. And if something's coming back, knowing to say, okay, it's coming back, who was on the first hearing, here's the list of people. It is now on my radar that this is an issue. I think it's on everyone's radar that this is an issue. So the existing commissioners, I think, are also capable of saying, oops, not me this time because that's been back. I just don't think it's that difficult.
Commissioner Bass, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, and in addition to Commissioner Buckner and Commissioner Also living within 500 feet, I think Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Cavallero also live very close to each other and could find a project within 500 feet. So I think the rest of us live far enough apart that we wouldn't be affected by that. But so not that they're both on a committee together, but could be at some point in time. That being said, I want to just thank staff for bringing this up, because I think we've all expressed, every one of us, how important it is that the public knows that when they come and they speak on an item that they've been heard, and that the perception that decisions are made outside of this room, which I know I don't make up my mind until I come in here, but that perception is out there at times, and it's important that people don't think, wait, these 4 people already all said that they liked this project or disliked this project in a design review committee or a series of them. So it's important to me that we not end up in that situation. But I would like to propose, because of that circumstance, right now our design review committee is constituted with 2 people who live very close to each other. Could there be an alternate just for that circumstance where something falls in there, so that we could have a quorum in that one, like that limited circumstance? I hate to put you on the spot like that, but that would be, I think, a solution where we'd have alternates in a very, very limited scope.
I think we can deal with special situations if something like that were to come up. I think there's ways around it. This is our recommendation for how to handle this, because it's just a difficult thing to track, as projects sometimes take a long time to go through the process and sometimes come back multiple times. So this is the recommendation that we're coming to you with. I think we can always account for special circumstances if they arise.
I would just rather, and I'm totally fair, and I don't want to seem in any way accusatory. This is meant to be a dialogue, and we obviously want to err on the side of caution whenever possible. But I think what I would rather do is, this is a special case with an alternate in a situation where a project is coming back and someone was not able to attend a meeting for illness or work or whatever other reason. But I would rather alternates be the rule, not the exception. And I feel like in this case, we're making the exception the rule. So I just want it to be as fair as possible to everyone. And some of us I didn't know about this until after it happened, which is something that I also would have liked to have avoided.
In light of that.
Oh, sorry, I want to Commissioner Erickson wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. I guess I see this on the other side, and from what I'm understanding and what I'm hearing from staff, I think upon advice of legal counsel, you're trying to get away with the perception that we want to make sure the public has as much accessibility and transparency when it comes to how these projects are reviewed in the subcommittee process. And any type of, although it's not meant to be a black mark, any type of, let's call it a smudge or something, that could be on that perception is something when it comes to the Brown Act and legalities for the public and their right to know are something you would like to avoid. And is that what I'm hearing? Okay. And then, sorry, I have two more questions. Have there been and because I'm not on a subcommittee, are there attendance issues with the subcommittee where Lynn and Rogerio and Stacy are on the subcommittee, but this is just a scenario, but Rogerio and Stacy have not been going, and so we have the alternates coming and another alternate coming, and then
No, it's
Lynn's back for another time. Is there some confusion? And then my third point is having been staff at the City of West Hollywood for quite some time, and been staff liaisons to commissions, I do worry about an unprecedented expectation of kind of the following of these very intricate details that it would place, although on our very talented secretary, I agree, but I have heard in my several commission meetings since then, there is a lot of emphasis being put on staff to track things, to do things for all the stuff that they would do, but it's heightened lately. And I worry that if a slip were to occur, it is upon this body, and then it is on our fault if we were then to violate the Brown Act. Again, which I'm hearing, it sounds like we did violate the Brown Act.
Heard. Our responsibility as members of this body is to the public. That's why we're here. We're here to represent the community. So I want to speak up as a member, we're all members of this community, mind you. So and those are very valid points, but we do have a very talented staff, and I wonder if there's not a way to work around.
I have a recommendation.
Can I bring up an example?
Sure. Roger,
Yep.
sorry.
There was a meeting right before the holidays I couldn't attend, and staff gave me the project to review ahead of time, and I sent all my comments in, and it was public record, and they discussed a design review. And what I suggest is maybe we just continue on that path. If someone can't go, the project is presented to that commissioner. That commissioner can still give comments on that project.
But what if the commissioner has to call in sick day of? I mean, that's going to present a problem.
And those comments are not available to the public.
Yeah, they were in my case.
Okay,
yeah.
But
Because they were discussed at the meeting. And then
Nor does the
project came
commissioner get
back.
the feedback from the public.
yeah,
in that
it's
meeting.
a hearing. It's a hearing, and the hearing doesn't happen if the commissioner isn't there. And my suggestion perhaps is that we just simply make it a section of the staff report. And the staff report simply states, this project has never been to design review before, period, new. Or, this project has appeared in front of design review on X date with Y in attendance. It's just one sentence in each design review staff report that makes it explicitly clear to all of the public what exactly the history of that project is within design review.
But it is your advice upon legal counsel that we get rid of delegates, alternates. Thank you.
This is also the first time this has ever been flagged in the 5 years we've had alternates. So I want to surface that as well. This has never been called into question before, and I don't believe any legal action, not that I would wish this for us, but has ever been brought against the city in an instance of,
Is this a public hearing? Are we supposed to invite comment from the public?
no,
Okay.
I do not believe so. It is just an item for us to be able to discuss. David, is that correct?
So to expand on my scenario before the holidays, yes, it was given to me a couple of days before I was able to submit comment. The comments were discussed at Design Review Subcommittee, and they were made public record. If somebody called in sick an hour or two before, you still have two. So you still have a quorum, the subcommittee can continue the meeting. If there's a situation, like Commissioner Bass, suggested, where two of the commissioners can't attend, can we just have that reserve of alternates to pick from in that one limited scenario?
I'm personally not comfortable with two. And maybe it's not up to me, but I really think that should be an exception and not a rule.
I would concur. I mean, the point is that we have a public process, and the reason we have all of us here is that we bring in diverse opinions and views. And I know that one time when I served as an alternate, you and I had a really excellent conversation. I think it was on the billboard. And we had some synergies around the conversation at the hearing that you don't get when you start eliminating people. And so that would be my concern.
I may just suggest that you see if anyone in the public has an opinion, since we've added it to an agenda for tonight. See if anybody wants to speak on the item.
Okay. I think what I would strongly suggest, I mean, I understand staff's recommendation and I understand the legal reasoning behind it based on staff and city attorney's office, but I'm wondering if there is not some other solution. Is there a way that we can bring this back to a future meeting?
And I guess the question too is, whose decision is it? This is the body who decided that there is a design review, and you as chair appoint the members of the design review. Who is the deciding body as to whether or not these committees should exist and how they should be composed?
I'm going to defer to city attorney on that point. In terms of us making rules as a governing body, or maybe Commissioner Altschul, you've been on commission for a long time.
As far as I've known, since I've heard of the Planning Commission, there's been a design review subcommittee, and the subcommittees have been appointed by the chair.
The bylaws, I do believe, mention subcommittees, but they don't mention alternates to the subcommittees.
Thank you. I guess what I'm asking is how much did the Planning Commission approve its own bylaws? I just want to make sure that we're kind of following procedure here. Is that?
Or was it,
the
designed by council?
The subcommittees are all created by the commission, the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission decided what issues they needed a subcommittee to talk about. So that was all created by the Planning Commission. All the bylaws, there's a basic bylaw pattern for all the commissions, and I think that was all approved simultaneously, all the
Yes,
commission's
I think all the
bylaws.
bylaws have been supplied and/or reviewed by the attorney's office and are somewhat uniform.
Right, and I get that the alternates are not covered there, so it sounds like this is a CYA move, and I get it. I guess again, to ensure that there is as much transparency as possible, I'm just wondering if there's not another solution.
Well, we can certainly think about it again. If anyone from the public wants to weigh in,
Okay.
we added it to the agenda.
Okay.
And
I guess in cases.
hear all your concerns.
Sure.
There's valid points on both sides. It's not like anything that any of the commissioners are saying is wrong.
Right.
You may have to continue meetings if you don't have an alternate. I mean, those are all fair points. I understand.
I guess I'm just curious too, in a situation like something like with Shoreham, and we have two commissioners who have to recuse from design review, there has to be, literally there would have to be alternates. We can't just have one person reviewing. I mean, I guess we could, but I'm not I wouldn't.
Right, and so that would be, if that happened, that would be a really special circumstance that you would have to reconstitute the subcommittee. You could reconstitute the subcommittee for that
For
one
that
project.
particular meeting?
For that
And
one
by
particular.
virtue of like an official action, you're saying?
I mean, it would be like, we're not going to have a quorum, so we can't have a subcommittee, so you would have to reconstitute the subcommittee with the appropriate people outside of the radius. And that would be the
and how would-
subcommittee for that item.
Excuse me, and how would that be done in a timely manner if a developer thinks that they're showing up at the March 1 meeting, and then at the last minute, we knew there was a recusal, so that was okay, we're going to have a quorum, but at the last minute, there's an illness, they're down to one person, so that developer now gets a continuance to next meeting. I mean, I'm concerned about, we've got permit problems as it is. We've got a schedule that we are obliged to, by law, to follow, but per the state, for, I forget the exact name of it, I'm sure you know, the Speedy Up Law.
Permit Streamlining Act.
Right.
Yes, and so we have that state law and we have the Brown Act state law. So we're trying to comply with both of those two laws. And so that's where it's the fine line of trying to comply. And the one thing we didn't mention was if an item comes back to a second meeting, but there's more than one item on it, then you have a subcommittee that you have one person has to step away and then another person has to step back. And so then that also gets into a little bit of the perception problem of this subcommittee is having multiple people coming and going in the same meeting. And so
Well,
that's also part of
I've
the
actually been in one of those meetings. I think it was Commissioner Altschul who had to recuse himself because of proximity. So he sat in on the first item, I came in on the second item, we explained it to the audience and to the citizens as to exactly what was going on, and I didn't see any concerns or questions.
Fortunately, we weren't challenged. I mean, that's, a lot of this has to do with the Brown Act. It sets forth certain things in the law, and we want to make sure we comply with the law. So if something happens, we can say how we complied with the Brown Act, and someone can't use something in a challenge.
Or stated another way, that it's simple and it's easy to follow who was at which meetings, how many people were there, and it doesn't become a complicated thing or create a bad perception for the public.
I want to, now that everyone in this room is bored of this topic, except for the people sitting up here and at the table here, I want to just suggest that the chair has not officially removed any alternates, and the staff has heard our concerns and understands the very specific circumstances around two of the current commissioners on design review being neighbors. So I would simply say we follow staff's, my opinion is we should follow staff's recommendation and encourage them to reconsider based on some of our concerns. Since we don't really have jurisdiction to tell them what to do, I think that's where we should head.
Lauren, did you rule, I mean, who is the deciding body on this issue? I mean, is it staff, is it planning commission, is it council? Who is the deciding body on this issue?
Well, the city attorney provides the legal advice for the city. As the director of the department, I'm the one that oversees, what the department does. And so I'm taking her advice, legal advice, and her legal advice is from not just her, but from everybody in her office, Mike Jenkins. And so they've been our city attorneys for years and years and years. And so I take that very seriously. And so when I hear that recommendation, then I take that to heart. And so that's why I would go along with her recommendation.
I think at this time I'm aligned with Commissioner Bass in that I think we can continue to follow this new recommendation by City Attorney's Office and staff's recommendation, but that at a meeting as soon as possible in our future, that you come back to us with kind of a proposal for how we might get around some of these other scenarios, because it's not, there are going to be times when two people have to recuse, someone is ill, et cetera. And again, if we don't have enough people on design review subcommittee to fairly hear a project, it is not in anyone's best interest. Anyone in the public, which is our number one priority, anyone who in the development community, anyone on this commission, or anyone at staff either, frankly, especially given the permit streamlining process and some of the measures that have been undertaken of late to address that. So I would also ask of staff in the city attorney's office, if anything comes up like this in the future, that we be given advance notice just so it can be messaged appropriately to the public.
Yes, we hear you.
Any other comments from commission?
Only that our city attorney basically offered that if there's anybody in the public who's sitting out there tonight has a comment, please stand up, come to and give us your feedback, because I think it would be very helpful to staff and commission.
You're also welcome to write into us or to staff after the meeting if you want to ruminate on it. I certainly don't want to cut anyone off at the knees, but if that's something.
Or if you're thinking about it and want to put in a speaker slip for the public comment at the end, that might be an appropriate time also for you to let us know what you're thinking.
No one's put one in yet, but any other comments? All right. We will move on to public hearings. Item 10B, 1245 North Formosa Avenue. Again, in case you weren't here earlier, came in a little late. We are moving around the order of the public hearing agenda, so it will be 10B, 10A, and then 10C.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Derek Purification, Associate Planner for the City of West Hollywood. The item before you today, or tonight, I should say, is a request for a subdivision of a recently approved 3-story, 4-unit multifamily building into multiple condominium ownerships. This project, or the development, was approved administratively on October 9th of 2018. The site is located at 1245 Formosa Avenue. It's south of Santa Monica Boulevard, west of Detroit, and east of Poinsettia Place. It is located in the R3B zone, which is a medium-density multifamily zone. Since the development was approved administratively, tonight's request is for the review of the subdivision only, as required by state law. As proposed, the subdivision is categorically exempt from CEQA provisions as an infill development project, and staff is able to make the findings and recommend approval of the project pursuant to the conditions of approval attached under Resolution PC 19-1310. Thank you.
Thank you. Possibly a record for shortest staff report ever. Tied only with our other subdivision request items. Do we have any questions for staff at this time? Do we have any public comment on this item, David?
We have the applicant's representative here, and we do have one public comment.
Sorry, thank you. Hello, please go ahead. I didn't mean to completely cut you out of our very transparent public process.
Good evening, my name is Andrea Keller. I'm the architect for this project, and I would like to voice my support of the staff report. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, I will close the public,
We do have
sorry,
one-
public
one-
comment.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to put it in the system. Felix, please.
Hello?
I'm the owner of 1239 North Formosa. That's the building to the left. If you can bring back the
Could you
picture.
please state your name and city of residence just for the record? Just state your name and city of residence. We'll just so it's read into the record.
City of Residence, West Hollywood.
Thank you.
Okay, if you can bring back the picture. I'm going to read a letter which was mailed to John Leonard on October 4th. That's within the period to approve the project. Good morning, Mr. Leonard. We are the owners of 1239 North Formosa. We would like to express our concern regarding 1245 North Formosa pending construction. We're on the left. That's right. Formosa is on the right. Now pay attention to the right and the left sides of the property. This property is adjacent to ours, 1245. We are concerned with the driveway of the pending construction. The driveway is planned to be adjacent to ours, even though it is currently located on the other side. Okay? It was on the right, now it's on the left. A driveway adjacent to our property will increase the noise and disturb the tenants. Since the building would have roof access, there is no reason for having driveway, living rooms, by the way, living rooms are also on our side, or balconies facing our property. And that's how it was approved, contrary to my letter. My letter was never answered. I'm going to finish up. We would like to ensure the driveway stays where it is. I don't know why the driveway need to move to our side where it's currently on that side, on the right side. We would like to ensure the driveway stays where it is today to reduce noise. Rentability, you're hurting my money. Also, we would like to ensure there are no balconies or living rooms facing our property for privacy reasons. Okay, you have been very helpful. This is John Leonard. Well, he hasn't been helpful to me, hasn't responded. We're talking about here, Mr. Erickson, Commissioner, I heard from the chair how much you care about the public. I didn't see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Steve Martin.
I don't see Martin, West Hollywood, and just from the East Side Neighborhood Watch, and basically, I think our only concern would be about staggering of construction, but we really are excited about new homeownership opportunities on the East Side, simply because we need more people to sort of anchor the neighborhood. As you know, our neighborhood's got a lot of issues with crime and homelessness, and it really helps when we've got a more stable population. And anyway, we think this project is going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments at this time?
No public comment other than applicant's rebuttal.
Of course. Do you have a rebuttal? Do you want to rebut at this time? No, thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of this hearing. Just to be clear for members of the public, this is a kind of a new, in keeping with some of the changes that our planning department has made to the way that projects are approved. This project has actually already been approved because it falls under a certain size threshold, which means that this is actually a formal hearing that is only for the subdivision map for this project and is not actually pertinent to the building of the project itself. The project has already been approved. I would encourage members of the public and neighbors to work with the applicant. I would encourage the applicant to work with the neighbors to address these kinds of concerns, but we are only here to vote on the subdivision map. City Attorney, is correct. Do we have any discussion on this item?
I just have a question for staff, I guess. So the member of the public, Felix, I believe, said that he emailed John Leonard on October 4th. Is there for some reason why John Leonard would not have emailed that information to the planning department? Because John Leonard is not in the planning department, and John Leonard he's a very educated individual, so I'm sure he knows who to send things to. However, he may not have known this project was even on or approved, as Stacy was saying. So my comments are, if a letter was submitted, why didn't we see it? And if we didn't see it and it wasn't given to the planning or whoever needed to see it, that's an error on staff's part. I guess my question for staff is, why didn't anyone respond to the member of the public?
As far as the letter, I saw the letter tonight, but it was never forwarded to me during the time of public comment.
Any other, Commissioner Altschul?
Following up on what Commissioner Erickson said, I think there must be some kind of a procedure if a member of the public sends in any kind of communication on one of these streamlined situations where the staff makes the approval and it doesn't come to a hearing. So can we please follow through with that to make sure that these procedures are followed and that somebody who writes a letter or somebody who has a concern gets it addressed or answered prior to the granting of the approval?
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so with the new process, a building of below a certain size, under certain thing, can go through staff for approval. Is there any notice at all to the neighbors about a project that's going to be coming to their neighborhood that would impact them, so that they would have an opportunity to address our department if there are issues?
Yes, all projects are noticed. In this circumstance, there was an on-site notice that was posted for 10 days.
Pardon?
There was this on-site notice posted for 10 days.
An on-site notice, a
Correct.
sign on the property
Correct.
that there was going to be approvals pending, is that correct?
That's,
correct?
well, that there's a pending application. And
Pending application.
that there's a pending application. It gives a description of the project itself and the comment period.
Okay, so
But the
with the,
system apparently doesn't work because this gentleman, within a timely manner, according to what he stated, sent in a communication and was never heard.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the communication was sent to John Leonard. The contact on the sign is actually for planning and would have gone to Derek directly. Somehow an email was not forwarded or something happened within that area. That's
May we ask
what
the
occurred.
gentleman why he chose John Leonard to send the letter to?
Because he handled another case, 1227. I have an email on that too.
When was this project approved?
This was administratively approved on October 9th of 2018.
But for some reason, the system doesn't seem to work.
But I think I want to be fair to staff and to the public here. If staff doesn't receive correspondence, it would be impossible for them to reach out to the community member about it. And it sounds like in this case, that has what's happened. I'm not saying that anyone didn't forward an email, but if you're saying you didn't receive it, I'm going to take you at your word.
yeah, my concern is that just because there's a sign up there that says that there's going to be, this project is set for approval in 10 days, and if there's any comments, but if you're turning left and you don't go by the sign, or you're turning right and don't go by the sign, and you're a neighbor on the street and it's impacting you, you're not going to see it necessarily. So I'm wondering if that's sufficient notice to the public about projects that are going to be in their neighborhood to just have a sign up. And I'm addressing that to our legal counsel. Is that, I mean, I know that there is notice of a sort, but is that going to be adequate? Because there's been a lot of these new projects through this new process.
Quick question for Derek and for David. Is the project noticed in any other way in advance of approval?
This project is noticed only with the on-site notice.
The other thing I just wanted to put in, we also, when this change was made, and it's post this project, it's now being extended to 28 days. It was 10 days legally noticed when this was done. It's now 28, so there's a longer posting period as we go forward.
But if I recall, when we talked about this public noticing requirement 2 meetings ago, they're blurring together now. Commissioner Buckner said this exact same thing, that these types of things fall through the cracks, and then it is the members of the public then that get the short end of the stick. And that is a problem, and that is why I think we had a very we had a very long, good conversation about how we publicly notice these items. But we have a case in an extreme case only 2 meetings later of changes to these changes to how we publicly notify these people, and here it is, and we're here, and it's a problem, and we need to make sure that city staff, when they get communications, and John Leonard is the director of community or whatever he is now, he should know to send anything regarding a project to the appropriate division. So I don't know if that's just an email or if that's management. I don't know. I don't work there anymore. I'm just trying to say, like, that stuff should just be better trained for city staff who already do an excellent job, just to make sure that the members of the public aren't, at the end of the day, at a commission hearing before us and we have to tell them, we're so sorry, but something didn't happen.
I do want to point out, I think the notice did work in this case. It's just the right person wasn't contacted, and I apologize that somehow that email didn't get to Derek, but the noticing was effective. They were aware of the project. It's just they weren't contacting the right person, and it didn't get to us.
Sure.
Sign contain information as to whom to contact?
Yes, it does.
And
Both
it's-
an email and a phone number.
And it's now going to be posted for 28 days instead of 10.
Correct. That was a city council decision when they made the change in their review authority.
I like that better.
Commissioner Bass?
So I'm really sympathetic to this because I'm somebody who writes to the city a lot, and I like to think that my emails are read and heard. So I just want to make clear The reason I asked what day that this was approved is because there is a window of time after a project is approved that if a resident doesn't like the decision of the director, that they can appeal that, in which case we could have considered the driveway issues, the balcony issues. We could have had that conversation. Tonight, we can't. The period has passed, and the issue before us is, does this building get built as is as one property, or does this building get built as is with imaginary lines between down the walls to make them different properties? And that's the question before us, and because that's the only question before us, I'll move the item.
Thank you. Commissioner Bass, before we vote and call the question, was going to say I'd like to limit. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to speak. We've already closed the public comment portion of the hearing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, that's actually not what's under consideration here before us tonight, and we will go ahead and call the question.
Moved by Commissioner Bass, seconded by Commissioner Buckner. The motion passes unanimously.
For talk. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break. And again, Commissioner Hooper and Garner is recusing from the next two items, which are item 10A, 8615 West Knoll Drive, and item 10C, 8550 Santa Monica Boulevard. We'll take a quick recess and re-adjourn in 5 minutes or less.
I just want to make it clear that the reason I'm recusing myself is that my property is within 500 feet of both these two projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hooper and Garner. All right, everyone. Our recess has finished, and I apologize I went over by just a couple of minutes. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and we will start the rest of our public hearings with item 10A, 8615 West Knoll Drive. I will defer to staff for them to give their presentation. Hello.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight I will be presenting a request for a 5-story, 10-unit condominium project at 8615 West Knoll Drive. The property is located near the intersection of Westmount Drive and West Knoll Drive. The property is currently a single-family dwelling on a 9,440 square foot lot. This property has been reviewed for historical significance. The applicant provided a report that was consistent with our policy and was peer-reviewed by our consultant Chattel Inc., which concurred with the findings. The zoning of the property is R3C, which is defined as a multifamily medium density. The streetscape on the north side of West Knoll Drive is primarily multifamily residences ranging in height from 2.5 story to 4 stories, varying in design style. The south side of West Knoll Drive is a mix of single-family dwelling and multifamily residences ranging in height from 1 story to 2 stories, also varying in architectural style. Highlighted in the red box is where the proposed development will sit in the streetscape. The applicant is applying for a density bonus to construct a total of 10 units with 1 very low-income unit. In compliance with state law, this project is eligible for 2 concessions. The applicant is requesting only 1 concession for an additional story, not to exceed 10 feet of the total project height. The project meets all applicable setbacks with exemplary design. The ground floor has Unit 1 and Unit 2. A common space for recreational activities, such as a gym use or theater room, is provided at the rear of the building, shaded in yellow. Unit 1 and Unit 2 both have a mezzanine level where the bedroom is located. The second, third, and fourth floors contain 2 units each, both with 2 bedrooms. The 5th floor contains Unit 9 and Unit 10. There's also mechanical and pool equipment in the enclosed area. The roof deck has an extensive green roof with planters outlined in the slide. The yellow indicates the solar area that is around the perimeter of the building. The area of solar panel exceeds the requirement to reach the number of points that have been allocated for solar power. The pool is indicated in blue here. As a green building incentive for reaching 90 points, private open space may be allowed a minimum dimension of 5 feet. The building meets this requirement. It is important to note that they are not decreasing the amount of private open space, but providing a minimum dimension. This is a colored rendering of the roof deck. The code allows the building height to be measured with the sloping site measurement. The building height envelope is measured at 55 feet from the front property line, shown here with the mouse, and rear property line, shown here as well as I'm circling the mouse. From the front property line, an invisible line with a rise and run of 1 to 2 is drawn to meet a line perpendicular to the height of the rear property line, which is shown here with the mouse. The building is within the allowed height envelope. This project satisfies the exemplary design standards by providing materials such as exposed board form concrete, wall, raw wood finish, and glazing put together in an elegant way. The building is relatively quiet in its visual aspect, but highly detailed in its simplicity. There is a park-like quality on the ground floor. Lastly, there is a dynamic quality to the building with the use of sliding barn doors and folding wood doors to cover and reveal windows. In the front elevation, there is also access to the courtyard. In addition, landscaping will be pedestrian-friendly. This is the rear elevation. In the rear elevation, you can see balconies for units 2 to 9. The units in the rear are just bedrooms. The common space is seen below and as a gym, theater, recreation room. This is the west elevation. The west elevation, you can see the external stairs, elevator access, green wall, the balconies, which surrounds the entire building, and the courtyard area. And this is the east elevation. As noted before, the balcony wraps around the building. Here is another rendering of the project. The applicant will get into more details, but here are some materials that are shown, the materials board. Some of the materials shown here are the exposed board form concrete walls, raw wood finishes, clear glass railings, and broken composite pavers with recycled crushed granite. Staff finds that this is a well-designed building in an appropriate location with on-site affordable housing and recommends approval. Staff is available for any questions, and so is the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Really appreciate it. Any questions for staff at this time? Again, this would be limited to questions about the project. Go ahead, Commissioner Bass.
Yeah, has this project been, has an independent qualified preservation consultant looked at this project and done a review?
Yes, we had it peer reviewed by Chattel.
I'm sorry.
We had the report reviewed by Chattel.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? No. Okay, so before the applicant presents, you'll have 10 minutes. We need to do disclosures. I'll start with you, Commissioner Buckner, and move on down the line. No?
I met with a neighbor, walked the property, and so I visited the site, and we only discussed items contained in the staff report, and based on our conversation earlier tonight, I want to disclose that I sat in as an alternate on the design review committee for this.
Excuse me, I was focusing on something that I was thinking about, and yes, I do have a disclosure. And I met with the architect, the developer, and the representative, and we discussed matters that are contained within the staff report.
Thank you. Commissioner Altschul?
Nothing.
I just want to disclose that I met with the applicant's representative and the architect, and we discussed items contained in the staff report.
I had a quick conversation with the architect's representative, and we basically asked me if I had any questions. I said no, and that was the extent of our conversation.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson?
I met with the applicant and the architect and discussed items in the staff report, and that's it.
Great, thank you. So with that, we will move into the applicant's presentation. You will have 10 minutes to present.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Jeff Seymour. I'm with Seymour Consulting Group. I reside in Westlake Village. I'm going to speak slowly, but try and move my four comments as quickly as I can. I want to give our architect as much time as he would need. So very quickly, there are four areas that we have heard through discussing this with you, with the neighbors and the like. First being the height and mass. As you know, there are two options for us to take when it comes down to determining height. We took the sloping site process and option. The project is well within the height envelope. This project, we are requesting no variances. We are requesting no modifications. The project is well within the code, and we're moving forward that way. With green points, the reason why we had a continuance is there were some questions in relation to our green point scoring. We came back after discussions with the staff, and the staff and scoring process that you have seen are the ones that we're living with now. The sound emanating from our rooftop, we have heard from our neighbors. We are in support of the condition that staff has placed in the resolution stating that the rooftop and noise and sound coming from the rooftop would end at 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Finally, in relation to the creation of a concrete building, I wanted to make it clear that we've had conversations, or at least our structural engineer has had conversations with both planning staff as well as with the building official. And it appeared from the discussions that they had that there was an agreement that a concrete building could be built. That said, we are well aware of the fact that when we bring this project to the building department, both the planning department and the building department will have a chance to review the Exhibit A to be sure that we are in conformance. If we are not, and the design has changed dramatically, we would obviously have to come back to you. It is my fervent hope we will not be doing that. Finally, I wanted to introduce our architect, who is going to go into significant detail in relation to this project. Marcello Pozzi has had a long career, first with Gensler. He is internationally known. He is doing projects both on the East Coast and the West Coast of America, and we're proud to have him as our architect. I do want to mention one other thing. The landscape architect, Ann Jones, just sent notice to us that she had a family emergency and is not here tonight, but Mr. Pozzi will be able to respond to any questions you may have in relation to landscape. So with that, I'm going to give Marcello a chance to speak, and hopefully we'll have time to respond to questions.
Hello, hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Marcello Pozzi, resident of Los Angeles, and I'm the architect of the project. So I'm trying to go very fast with the slides. This describes a little bit the process and the rationale behind the whole design and the architecture that we wanted to do. So everything starts with an idea. This is the site. First and foremost, we wanted to have the parking underground for all the benefits that this created urbanistically in particular, but also with the whole architecture of the project. Now, we consider immediately the maximum possible mass, but we say, no, we don't want to build the maximum. We want to build what is right, what it feels right, considering the cityscape and considering the proportion of the building, which we took in serious consideration, and we proportioned everything and composed our facades using the golden section system as a rule. So it's a very classical way applied to a very contemporary building. Now, we increase the setback as much as possible. This is a very important thing. We reduce the massing at the ground level for 50%, for more than 50% of the building, to create a really sight line through the entire lot. So it's really a porous project. And again, this reduces the masses and keeps an open and a relief to the passerby. This is the mass that gets removed. Then, of course, we wanted a California living experience, and we are committed to use the courtyard typology as much as possible in our projects. And this is the volume removed for the courtyard, which is, for a project of this size, is actually unusual, but we were very happy to find a solution for it. Then, as a strategy of design, we shrink the mass all around on 4 sides within the structure. We extended out the balconies all around so that the feeling of the interior spaces are extended out to the outside all around, and creates very strong shadow lines, even again on all the facades. Then we express the structures. We put a green roof on top, and we arrive to our final solution. Very important, the entire design, and I would say the design of the voids, it's critical for this project and is as important as the volume built, because it's the common space and is really the void that is connected to the urban environment and the city. Talking a little bit about the typology, the courtyard is, of course, we use it for the benefit that the natural chimney effect creates and controls the microclimate of the building, ventilation, and so forth, but also is a typology that, you know, also the code recommends and is typical of California. And on a personal note, I come from Milan, and Milan is called the city of courtyards, actually, and as the buildings are, most of the buildings are constructed with this typology, and is a typology that really relates to the urban tissue, to the rest of the city. You pass by a building, you see through it, through the big arches. In our case, we have the colonnade that is the visual and spatial connection to the courtyard all the way up to the ceiling, to the rooftop. Now, the building is designed very much from the inside out, and we can say that the exterior and the logic of the building is very much dictated by the concept of the space of the inside and the plan. So you can see the example of famous modern houses, and the Stahl house is there as an example of all the case study houses. They use the same pass-through kitchen. The pass-through kitchen is really the kitchen that distributes the spaces and organizes clearly a floor plan. Now, this is the design analogy that can show you how the courtyard distributes the units. And as a very important, the typical floor, we have these units that are, we call it through lot units. So we didn't want to have a unit in the front and a B unit in the back, but with a clear and strong idea, we came up with this concept that really creates a generous living and dining area in the front, and the bedrooms in the back with view to the hillsides. Now, this is the result from one side looking towards the city of West Hollywood. This is from the living rooms looking back to the hillsides, and you see how the balcony, that they are 2 feet projection, but 2 feet within the structure for a total of 4 feet, creates really an expansion of the interior spaces. The loft units, these are ending of the loft units, which are the only ones, of course, where we have back and front unit, but we offset, let's say, the disadvantage of being on the lower level with the fact that they are a double height and a walk-up unit. The elevations are treated all with the same, let's say, with the same respect. They have the same architectural quality and the same importance to us, and is pretty clear in particular from the balconies that wraps all the building. And again, they create a shadow line and a rhythm which is consistent, very simple, but we find very sophisticated also. The front facade, we had a little adjustment that came up actually in the design review with Mr. Cavallero, that actually originally we had the division between the balcony and the front is always crucial for a project like this, and it was offset a little bit and a little smaller, and actually it was the only thing that was not proportioned correctly. So we just recenter it and enlarge it a little bit and proportion it again with the golden section as the rest of the facade. So that now the only exception to a very regular and serene building is the offset of the column at the ground floor, which is always, we find it very interesting to have a building very regular with one exception that makes all the rules more harmonious or more evident. Of course, the reference to the material and the, I lost it.
Yeah. Time's up, I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness, I had to, it's okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will,
Question.
thank you. Do we have, I think we'll hold questions for the applicant until after the rebuttals. That's okay with everyone? I'd like to move into public comment. We do have a number of public comments. So I will call the first speaker up to, sorry. That's a great question. Let's see, how many do we have? All right. I'm going to limit public comment to 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes, just to be, keep things moving along here. So I will call our first speaker up to the podium, Alexander Vago, followed by Skylar Aud. Please, again, state your name and city of residence just so it can be read into the record. Thank you.
Hello, staff, commissioners, everyone in attendance. My name is Alexander Vago. I live in West Hollywood at 1036 North Spalding Avenue, and I'm very happy to be here and voice my encouragement for this innovative and beautiful project that I believe will contribute to the aesthetic of the community and the neighborhood. And I'm very much for the advancements of the ecological and environmental progression in keeping with what the city's green agenda in recycling rainwater and environmentally sensitive building materials. And so I voice my favor and here to I think the design is a brilliant design, and the city is honored to, should be honored to have such a brilliant Italian architect to contribute to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Skylar Out, and again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, please correct me, followed by Donald Scott.
Hello, my name is Skylar Aud, resident of West Hollywood. I'm a terrible public speaker, so forgive me. I've been on the south side of Holloway. I have a 3-bedroom unit that faces West Knoll, and I've been in this unit for 27 years. And in 27 years, I've never felt compelled to come to any type of meeting, city council or city planning, but I really feel compelled to come and share my concerns with this and speak out against this project. On Holloway Drive, we have a blockage in the morning. It's just a complete parking lot. So we have westbound drivers who will cut into the eastbound traffic lane and make a quick left and hook down Westmount. And by the time they get to this point of driving the eastbound traffic and get to Westmount, they're already pissed off because they've already been backed up in traffic for so long. So Westmount is a downhill slope, so they're speeding, they cut into this. I filmed 14 cars doing this on Monday, and by the time you get to the bottom of Westmount, it's a roundabout, so it's not a stop sign. That roundabout puts a lot of us pedestrians in danger. We've had a lot of near misses and some actual hits there. Once you come off the roundabout and make a right onto West Knoll, into where this project is looking to get into, it's parking on the north side and the south side of the street to where there's really just not enough room for 2 cars to come in there, and these cars are coming too fast and hooking around in this West Knoll lane. Furthermore, we've been inundated for so many years for so much construction. All of the noise at my level of my unit captures all of the noise from Chamberlain, the rooftop parties, the special permits, the production. West Knoll at this same intersection has open parking in the middle of the afternoons, so people come down and anybody can come in and park for Trader Joe's, Starbucks, 24-hour fitness. Chamberlain hotels, since it went from Summerfield Suites to Chamberlain Hotel, we've got all of the valet, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, limo drivers on Westmount. They've moved their valet over to West Knoll, which is more traffic there. So now you've got open parking on West Knoll, you've got the valet for West Knoll, for the Chamberlain, and you've got, and I just want to say one thing. I know my time is up, but I just want to say, for West Knoll, you've got a request for 7 demolition, to demolish 7 homes on this street.
I'm sorry,
And
I need you to wrap it up.
there's only 10 homes left. I mean, what's left? It doesn't belong here. It's too
Thank
big.
you.
It's the Goliath. It's too big.
Thank you. Donald Scott, followed by Paul Hancock.
Hi, I'm Donald Scott. I live in West Hollywood with my husband, and we live directly across the street at 614 West Knoll Drive. And I should say our shared concern is that the methodology of determining whether the height of the project is consistent or inconsistent with the intent of an R3C zoning is actually not applicable to this current design. It's actually, when measured from West Knoll Drive, has a height of approximately 63 feet, and the limit for a design of this nature with one concession would be about 55 feet. So kind of, does it fit the intent of an R3C zoning? The short answer is no. So we're just asking that it be refined. It's great to know that there's a really interesting international architect involved. I think that's awesome. But we want to keep the spirit of the residential area looking residential and not commercial. So thank you.
Thank you. Paul Hancock, followed by George Biarski.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Paul Hancock. I'm a resident of West Hollywood. I just want to give my resounding yes on 10A. I think that it's a beautiful design, and the aesthetic is beautiful. It meets all the elevation requirements for something that's aesthetically pleasing in my book. I would like to be able to live in West Hollywood in a nice, newer place. The stock is down, and especially my specific interest in this project is the low-income unit that's available. I'm a veteran, a decorated veteran that lived in your parks 2.5 years ago and got sober and have been working very hard to get my life back together. And this kind of a building and this kind of project affords me the opportunity to live in this beautiful community. and I appreciate that, and again, it's a yes from me. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. George Biarski, followed by Zvi Jari.
Good evening, Commissioners. George Wiarski, resident WeHo. I think that I attend a lot of meetings, but I think I also miss a lot because this building, this project is sort of new to me in terms of presentation, not necessarily in terms of what the project will look like. I realize that an international architect has been involved and so on, but to me, basically, it's still a flat wall, even with all the new materials and so on, and the small wraparound balconies. It's still a flat wall within a square shape or a rectangular shape. And in fact, I think the back looks a little more interesting than the front. I think usually if you have articulation for a 3- or 4-story building, the articulation should be large, a disturbance of space. And it would seem that that's exactly what's provided here in terms of the straight-through articulation. But I don't think it plays much effect. It's on the bottom floor. It's, if anything, it sort of accents the weight of the 3 floors above it. And, as all comments of this sort come in, it doesn't provide for any larger view. It's a very tall building, and it doesn't really comport with the general character of the community. I know that those are weak comments, but I think all of that is there.
Thank you, Mr. Biarski. Zvi Jari, followed by Felice Kaplan. Someday I'll get your name right. I'm sorry.
Okay, nobody does. Zvi Jari, 28 years in West Hollywood. I live on Larrabee. I own a condo. I go to the 24-hour fitness. I go to the Trader Joe over there, and I hang out in the Starbucks over there. Traffic in LA, that's fake news. Come on. There's no other way. I mean, LA would not be LA without traffic. And you cannot do much about it. And most of the traffic, it's not even people who live in West Hollywood. I supplement my income driving for Lyft and Uber, and I go around. And I can tell you, I'm trying to bring my daughter and my son-in-law from Michigan. They're both doctors. They're doing residency. They would love to live in West Hollywood. But there's no places. There's not enough housing in this town. We need more. And this is a beautiful, can I put a deposit on it? It's really, it reminds me of the architecture that the Danish are doing. It's very innovative, it's green, it's pleasing to the eye. And anyway, this lot, eventually, we're going to have to do something with it. It's not just going to stay there bare. So I'm very much for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Felice Kaplan, followed by Jonathan Freeman Anderson.
Hi, I'm Felice Kaplan, and I wrote a little rhyme, so it saves some time. Okay. So I would love to live at 8165. If I myself could live on West Knoll at 8615, I believe I would truly be so much happier to be alive. Why wouldn't anyone be, not just me? If it would stand there so beautifully at 55 feet tall, which is at 50 feet tall, which isn't small, but not so terribly large at all. Even 55 feet, would be allowed, and it sure as hell does stand out from the crowd. It is an amazing modern project that has 10 gorgeous units that shine out like a star and has underground parking for one's bicycle and one's car. And has underground parking, like I said, for one's bicycle and car. It also meets the standards as a high-achieving green building too. The truth is, just some of you just complain about anything new, probably still driving an old jalopy from 1982, and never changing your brand of shampoo, just sticking to the same things like Elmer's glue, which is pretty old too. It's time to move on and give change a chance, and soon you will make bigger steps to a brand new dance. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Freeman, I'm going to challenge anyone to beat that tonight in terms of creativity of
She's
comment.
giving Larry Block a run for his money. I would just
Sorry.
like everyone to be aware.
I want to be respectful to everyone speaking this evening. Jonathan Freeman Anderson, followed by Hector Barbosa. Sir.
Jonathan Freeman Anderson, resident of West Hollywood. I'm not going to turn city council into Hamilton. I'm sorry. What I will say, though, is I'll disclose, I walk by this property pretty regularly. I live, 1329 North Olive. It's just slightly east of La Cienega, and so you could take down that path to get through this area. What I do like about the nature of the neighborhood is that it provides a clear, distinct space where it would be safe and reasonable and beautiful to raise kids and own a piece of the environment in West Hollywood without it feeling crowded. One of the fears I have is obviously like the idea of like urban canyons and stuff like that, and this project is contradictory to that, obviously. It gives space on all sides, which is fantastic. Otherwise, I realize that we need more green in the city, period, to combat whatever you feel about climate change, but realistically, we can help and consistently help with that with designs like this. And in that way, it almost feels like a chia building. Can't we get behind that? It's going to start like a square, but when you landscape it correctly, it can be whatever you want it to be. And if you have that attitude like West Hollywood and has its own culture and its own identity, all the buildings have a chance to, create its own character. I also would like to support the fact that it allows for affordable housing within the city, and we need to maintain that opportunity for those who aren't as better off. Thank you.
Thank you. Hector and Barbosa, followed by Christopher Thaxter.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Hector Barbosa, and I've been a resident of 938 Palm Avenue for over 11 years now. And I have a history that goes all the way back to the 1970s here in West Hollywood. My mother first did business in this, it wasn't a city, I guess, back then, but in this town for a very long time. And then I was, as a teenager, I came to parties with my friends and eventually ended up working or just living in this neighborhood. West Hollywood has gone through many changes, some of them good, some of them tragic, as we all know, over the decades. But somehow it always steps up, to the challenges. And right now that I'm in my 50s, I would like to see myself at 80 and look back one day and say that West Hollywood adapted. The people had its needs, and it met them. Right now, we're in a crisis of housing. I'm faced every day with friends who face certain challenges in finding the right place to live, whether they have money or whether they don't have money. It's just a lack of opportunity for different types of units that they can either rent or buy. And in a surrounding area that I live in, where most buildings were erected, I guess, somewhere from the late 50s to 60s and 70s, which were quite cheaply made, okay, some of these buildings, eventually they have to come down. And that is exactly what I want to see. I want to see that we do step up with the times and that some houses or some apartment buildings are going to be modernized and offer more opportunity to people, but and also with better options. Like I said, it's something to look forward to. I hope that when I do reach that age, that I will be able to say that. And let me tell you, some of the buildings on my street, they're like that old whore, that you can apply another layer of makeup, but it doesn't change a thing. Well, you can add another layer of paint, but it's still old buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Thaxter, followed by Kelly Stagg. Oh, thank you. Kelly Stagg, followed by Dominic Bonanno. Kelly is not here. Again, if anyone ends up coming, please let the secretary know so that I can make sure you have your turn at the podium.
Good evening, Council. Looks like we've met again. So, I'm for the project, but...
State your name and city of residence. for the record.
Dominic Beatty Bonanno, West Hollywood resident.
Thank you.
What I find disheartening is that there's so many people who are on the verge of homelessness. People in West Hollywood, for the most part, are one step away from being homeless, one paycheck away, actually. I myself have had a stroke and have no housing, literally. I had a stroke almost 2 years ago and still no housing. The issue is I see people like me every day falling through the cracks, and that is the main reason why I'm for this project, but more than that, why 10 units? Why not 100? It just seems like no one can actually move ahead or get ahead, and I find it, for myself, without crying, it's frustrating as hell. I mean, I have wonderful friends who are helping me, and without them, where would I be, really? So the situation is that we need more affordable housing, low income in particular, because I noticed that a lot of people are below the margin line, if you will. So I'm for the project. It's beautiful, and I think it's going to add a little flair to that neighborhood, because I used to live on that side of West Hollywood. So yeah, so in that respect, I am for the project 100%. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming to speak. Benjamin Wheeler, followed by Javier Mulero.
Benjamin's my husband. He had to work. Sorry.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for letting us know. Javier Mulero, followed by Steve Martin.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Javier Mulero. I live in West Hollywood. I support this project. I think that 20 feet of space between the building and the sidewalk, make it very attractive to stroll and walk. Should be quite beautiful. The view corridor looks amazing. I think that's responsible development. It's a design of great beauty. I think it'll provide good living in a great location. The trees, the greenery, the landscaping, that's all great. And it's a building that's designed for a lot that the design doesn't crowd its own space of a lot. That's responsible building. That's a responsible way of going forward in the future in the city. The rooftop landscaping, the greenery. This city has changed a lot in the last, since the 1920s, when it was called Sherman, unincorporated, and it will change a bit in the next 40 years and in the next 100 years. And this is a beautiful, responsible way of going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Martin, followed by Ron Cook.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. I did have a couple of questions in regard to the affordable housing. Was that based on the new state revisions or the West Hollywood Code? Because it just seems, as much as this is beautiful, I mean, it's a very massive project, and there's a lot of square footage here, and it just seems a shame that we're only getting one affordable unit out of it, even though it's very low unit. Maybe we need to be looking at these projects in a different way and start looking at determining the affordable housing on the amount of square footage and putting in perhaps smaller units or micro units and maximizing the amount of affordable housing we get. Because one affordable unit in a place that basically is affluent as this just doesn't seem like it's really enough. I guess the other issue I wanted to talk about, I recently had sold my home on Huntley, and my neighbors are going through the joys of construction. And there's underground parking, et cetera, but it's on the flats of south of Santa Monica. And here there's going to be even greater challenges as far as the slope, the excavation, everything that they're doing here being so cheek and jowl. I just don't know if we're really demanding the sort of engineering expertise to put forward that we're just saying, yes, you're going to dig a hole and it's going to all be fine. Because we're finding out time and time again that that isn't what happens. The neighboring buildings are not fine. And then those people have to go forward and litigate with the developer. And that's really not fair, because in a way, the city needs to anticipate these sorts of problems so that we make sure we're protecting the people who live here and have their life savings invested in their homes. So anyway, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Ron Cook?
Hi, Ron Cook, City of West Hollywood. I live at 8609 West Knoll Drive, directly east of the proposed unit. I am strongly opposed to the current architectural and structural design. I think it's out of character with the neighborhood, mainly because of its height. So I think that the commission should reconsider and ask them to stay within the 55-foot limit. If you look at the design of the building, both the drawing and the model here, it's actually a lot taller than 5 stories. It's actually more like 6 or 7. The first floor having the mezzanine, I think that's a fancy way of saying it's a 2-story. So if the first floor has 2 stories, including a mezzanine, plus 4, per my math, that's 6 floors, plus a roof deck with very tall trees. From the front of the building, it gives the elevation of actually having 7 stories. I think that they should consider moving the pool to the floor or to the basement so that it wouldn't be noise problematic for neighbors like myself. I know that they added a caveat that said they were going to have the CCNRs have the pool stop being used after 10 p.m., but really, is that enforceable in a private residence, especially when it's at the back of the building? Confirming that there's a lot of traffic congestion already on West Knoll, a very narrow street. And as people have said before, people get frustrated driving down from Holloway, and it's already hard to pass when you're driving to and from work in the morning. There are multiple other projects on West Knoll Drive that would add to this. If this building gets approved, there would be a lot of noise and congestion. I noticed in one of the caveats it said that people working on this building would not be allowed to park in West Hollywood. And then I have the question, where would they park? Are they all going to Uber to and from? There's also an underground river that services and provides a lot of water in the street, and I've not heard mention about what the excavation would do to that. So again, I'm strongly opposed to the height and hope you would reconsider in having the building redesigned. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Gillick, would you like to read the names of the people who oppose staff's recommendation?
Yeah, the following chose not to speak. They oppose staff's recommendation of approval: Richard Chamberlain and Ron Cook.
Thank you. The applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Madam Chairman, I know that the Commission has a number of questions in relation to this project. I'm going to simply state at this point that we believe that this building complements the 2-, 3-, and 4-story buildings on the north side of West Knoll. We're replacing one single-family unit with 10 units, one of which is a very low-income unit. We believe that we are trying to bring as high a quality structure and building and design as we possibly can to the city of West Hollywood, and we're open to any questions and concerns you may have as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Does anyone on the commission have questions for the applicant at this time?
Yes.
Commissioner Caballero?
Okay. I have a few. Has this project been reviewed by a civil engineer?
I'm sorry?
Has this project been reviewed by a civil engineer?
Yes, actually, John Labib and Associates is going to be our structural.
Your
civil
structural.
ensuring, yes.
No, I understand the structural has been reviewed.
No,
but
they're providing also civil
Oh, civil
service
work
for it,
also?
yes.
Okay, great. And what about a fire marshal? Has the fire marshal seen the project?
The fire department, yes. I don't know if the fire marshal is in person, but yes, we have the letter of approval from the fire department.
Okay, because you have operable windows within 10 feet of a fire exit staircase, and that's not permissible. So the fire marshal approved that?
They saw it, and there is a little bit of an argument because it's an open staircase. They might be allowed. However, in case we could have windows that they are they are self-closing, or we can,
Yeah, you can use emergency shutters, but either if you close those windows, then your cross ventilation doesn't work quite as elegantly as it's proposed in the packet. So that was just one comment. And the other one is that you have 2 fire exit stairs coming down to one pathway, egress pathway, and you need 2. So likely you're going to have to cut through one of the units down on the ground floor to create a second egress fire. That's why I'm concerned whether
no,
the
that one we reviewed with both the fire and also the building and safety, because the exits are, of course, more than 1/3 of the diagonal of the building, and it is fine because it is a central, again, central court and open to the sky, and we just need to comply to the distance. So it's not a problem of crossing path, because also because we have a big setback in big backyard of more than 15 feet, that's considered a safe area of refuge. So for example, when people are coming out from the parking lot, that's what you are alluding, or crisscrossing of exits, that's considered a safe area for people to be safe.
Okay, great. So he has reviewed
So we
it.
considered, yeah.
Okay, great.
And actually, on that point, between fire and building and safety, they did actually made us move a stair in the parking lot. It was working even before, it was complete in the back. Now we move it in the front in order to exceed a little bit the 1/3 requirement, and also there was a discretionary advice from building and safety.
Okay. Have you also considered the environmental impact? You're proposing this building as being board form concrete. Are you thinking of using real wood to create that board form?
No,
Okay.
well, nowadays basically, it depends on the contractor. I have experience in New
It
York.
depends on the cost too,
On the
and
cost too.
and the environmental impact. And that was where I was going with, if you can use real wood for board form
Yeah.
concrete for this
No,
entire
it's gonna
building.
be probably a liner. They're going to be liners. Nowadays, basically, this is a plastic liner in the forms, and then they create the board form effect.
And you're not worried about the quality?
I am, well, no, meaning that we want to have the best quality possible, of course. And I know we are pushing for something very nice, but also the board form was used because at the beginning of the project with the urban designer, we paid very much attention to the downspouts and the drainage of the building and the balconies, and with the pattern of the board form, which is vertical on the columns, we wanted to hide the downspout in the middle. So, but of course, yes, it is always a concern, but we also believe that the roughness of one finish next to the refined wood screen and windows in anodized aluminum in a bronze finish and the wood siding, it contributes to the beauty of the design.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Altschul.
Mr. Seymour, is this project a part of the project that you also have that goes down West Knoll and around to Santa Monica Boulevard?
No.
Where is it in Justice?
That's on that's another block over. The roundabout, so it would be, this project is west of the roundabout, and 8555, which is what you're thinking of, Commissioner, is on the other side, on the east side.
So this is completely different ownership?
Completely.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Commissioner Bass?
Yeah, I would like to ask, I'm really concerned about the construction impacts of hauling all of the dirt. And there's a lot of construction in my neighborhood, and I know the impact of hauling dirt from just digging down, but now you're going to take a sloping site and dig that out as well. So if you could address that, and also if you can talk to me about or to us, about the experience, the pedestrian experience, which was raised earlier tonight, for folks, because this is such a walkable neighborhood. We heard that from quite a few speakers tonight. Talk to us about what that front yard will look like.
Yeah, okay. So well, let's talk about first the second question. The front yard is pretty much a clean setback with all real, is actually the curapia is the name of the exact species of grass, which is a very strong and low maintenance type of grass, which we are using on the all ground floor and the rooftop. It's the reason that we wanted a clean setback is to create really a relief for the passerby, because if you walk now on West Knoll, even the building next to it or the building in just on to the other side is really close. Is actually like 15 feet on from the sidewalk, and is an obstruction. This one should create an openness for the passerby, and enhanced by by the fact that we lifted up the building for 50% of the surface and creating this colonnade. So it's pretty much a clean setback, and with all grass and strelitzia on both sides. Actually, that's the landscape species that we chose for the front of the building.
And the construction issues.
Oh, the construction, yes.
Yeah, with the
construction. Well,
dirt hauling.
we need to remove a lot of dirt, of course. This is also, I mean, the site is a sloping site, and this is also a good expense for our client, but is dictated by the fact that we wanted to have an underground parking, and it's unavoidable for this type of projects. I mean, the alternate would be to have the parking on the ground and remove. Anyway, you still need to remove a lot of the dirt. So the type of work is still the same. It's just that, yeah, it's probably a little bit more because we decided to go down with the parking, and by going down with the parking also offsets the. We are keeping the building as low as possible, because we could go way higher based on the height calculation. We have an envelope that is about 15 feet higher than what we are proposing, but we are trying to keep the building as low as possible, and that creates, of course, a burden also economically, because we need to remove a lot of soil. But as far as let's say the noise or the problem that would cause to the neighbor, it would be more or less the same if we had to not dig that much down. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's a type of job that is typical for this type of development.
You envision a very beautiful. First of all, I'm going to say that I love the aesthetic of your building. You know that from design review.
Thank you.
So as you described the front yard, where are you putting your transformer, and how are you
Oh,
dealing?
the transformer, yes, we are showing it in the, yes, we didn't show it in the rendering.
Yeah, it's
true.
not anywhere in the drawings.
There is a button that doesn't.
So if you're
make us
using
show
lawn,
transformer.
how are you dealing with that element?
Yeah, no, the transformer is shown in the model. It's
Mhm.
going to be it's right here on the right side, screened by landscape. Now,
What does that? We've had other projects that have been screened by landscape. What does that mean when you have a beautiful lush lawn in the front with, trees with tall trunks? How are you screening it?
No, I know. We need to do the best. We still have the chance. We spoke with Edison, actually, and we still have a chance to possibly put it in the back of the building. They might allow that. However, 90% of chances that it's going to be in the front. And that's, unfortunately, is a requirement that is very difficult for us to avoid. The thing that we have a small building with 10 units, the actual box is going to be approximately 3'6" by 3'6" by 3'6" high.
Mhm, mhm.
So it is, we feel, and not having an exit on the sides of the building, we feel that it would be tucked in enough. I mean, we can see it in the model. The front yard is still very open. And of course, it does not interfere with what we don't want is the entrance of the building where the paving start,
No, I
coming
understand.
out from.
I understand the problem. I'd just like to understand how you're going to resolve it. And your question half satisfies my satisfies my question. The also Commissioner Bass starts alluding to something that I felt strongly about in regards to excavating this site. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but again, you know that I love the aesthetic of this building. I think intellectually it's interesting. It kind of captures sort of the innovative qualities that I saw an image of the Schindler House up there. It was like, that's, I think, a great point of departure for architecture in this city. And I think your building itself captures that ingenuity. However, it's almost like you design the building, and then now we're cutting into the ground to receive the building, as opposed to the building responding to the landscape and not having to make such a harsh cut. And that's why I asked the question about the civil, because you're going to end up with what could be a 30-foot retaining wall on the back end of your project. And how does that cavern that you're creating transform the experience of this beautiful building? And is it the right approach?
Yeah, no, it is, well, we won't get to 30 feet, but yes, it is a tall retaining wall. And we probably will need to make a step of one or 2 feet.
Right, you either need buttresses or tiebacks, which you're never going to get the tiebacks.
No, we don't need the tiebacks. We will do everything with the rakers or struts, so we don't need it. But is also, of course, if we could, but that requires permit for the neighbors. But we are ready to do it without the tiebacks. And the fact that it is true. I mean, there is but we had to make a choice at the beginning of the planning, meaning that we know that there is a little bit of a canyon, let's say, in the back of the building.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's why also we pushed it, and the required backyards is 15 feet. We are about 25 feet, 24 feet, 8 inches, I think. And this should, create the possibility of having the view of the hillside even from the first floor unit. And we're trying to mitigate it. There is also, I know it's a little radical, but there is also a beauty of seeing a building that is received by the site this way. So I don't see it as a negative altogether. The things that, in order to also, let's say, mitigate this thing, because it is a difficult site, it is a big slope. That's why also we are proposing this big empty space on the ground floor, because it is going to be very different experience when you walk in front of a building and you look through the entire lot. So you're going to see light coming from 170 feet away. It's a totally different things that as anybody can experience on West Knoll or any other streets right now. When you pass the building next to it is you basically walk next to the entrance of the parking, and then bushes, and is all is fullness. In our case is emptiness, but is a welcoming, and I think is also a generous approach. So yes, I hope we are offsetting that.
Yeah, I mean, what we're articulating now, and we're getting a little intellectual, but you're starting to say, like Vincent Scully's books, Pueblo Mountain Dance, work with the earth, or The Gods, the Earth, and the Temple by Vincent Scully is like, we organize the landscape as we want, and we put our building on top of it. That's your approach. The approach that I think might have been a little bit more sensitive is something that works with the landscape in this situation, just because it feels more environmentally sensitive. Yeah. You're going to have cement trucks 3 days in a row pouring each floor, and you have 7 floors. And you need 2 weeks in between each floor for those floors to cure. So we're talking about 3 to 4 months of just cement trucks going through this neighborhood on a continual basis as you do each pour. And I think and then all the soil that needs to come out. For me, there's something that's disturbing about that. And what you're presenting is an argument that is as equally valid with a totally different approach. But now you understand the conflict that I'm having with the project.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? No? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move, and we will move into, actually, just a quick note. Does Commission want to have an opportunity to look at the model before we move into discussion? You good? Okay. We'll move forward then. Who would like to begin?
I have a quick question.
Commissioner Altschul?
I think it's a very, very beautiful design project with a very important look and well thought out. Yes, it is somewhat dense. It is a little bit higher than the buildings that are there now, but we have this overwhelming desire to have affordable housing, and it's not going to come out of the clear blue sky because there isn't enough land around West Hollywood for affordable housing to be built by itself. So the only way it's going to happen is if people build buildings like this, and one at a time or two at a time, we get units that we can give to people that are actually in need. And the state provides bonuses, concessions for the developers in order to be able to have these things. Does it solve the universal problem? No, of course not. Does it chip at it and make some progress? Yes, it does. And as Jack Kaiser, who is no longer with us, who was one of the housing gurus of this region, told us in a housing forum quite a few years ago, height is your friend, and this is not a building of height that is in anywhere near something that is not aesthetically desirable. It is aesthetically desirable, and I think it does go a little bit towards solving the problem, is an example to developers in solving the problem, and is a lesson to us that if we want affordable housing, it's going to have to come as an adjunct to building buildings and increasing our density like this. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Buckner.
Yes, I too have a very positive experience with what I imagine the building's going to be like when it is built. I like the idea. I know it's tall and somewhat narrow, and I understand the comments that people are making, but I think that when you walk along the street, along West Knoll, and you look through that building, you're not going to have that sense of, you know, a gigantic building, because there's so much openness and it's so interesting, the structure and the design. And I just think it's quite well designed, and I love the materials that are proposed. I hope that they're able to use all of them and that it comes out looking as beautiful as it is. I know that it's going to be a problem while it's being built, because whenever we're building these buildings, it does impact the neighborhood, and it's going to be for a while, you know, whatever length of time it takes, but when it's done, I think it's going to really add to the neighborhood. And I like the fact that there's a very low income unit that's going to be made available, and that we're going to get quite a few number of additional housing units that's going to add to our housing stock. I do have a quick question. It says that you're going to, with regard to the swimming pool and the up on the deck, it says you're going to prohibit large gathering or parties in the rooftop area. What is a large gathering or party? It's not very clearly defined, and I think that needs to be addressed in the CC&Rs a little bit more specifically, because it's ambiguous. So I just want to make sure that when you get to that point, that you'll work through that with the developer, and as they pass the project along to the homeowners. and I'm prepared to support this project. I think that the attention to detail is considerable, and I think it's going to turn out to be a really beautiful addition to West Hollywood.
Thank you. Commissioner Bass.
Yeah, I too I had a very favorable response to this when I sat on the design review committee. I think it's a beautiful building. I think that the exemplary design is satisfied because it looks better not having the setback on those upper floors. So that's basically the criteria for exemplary design. But beyond that, I just think it's a beautiful building. I had asked staff in advance of the meeting to prepare a condition that I hope the commission will consider that I know that they prepared, that would condition this project that if the concrete changes, because I think that's essential to the design of this building, that it would have to go back through the process so that when this is built, neighbors can be assured that it's going to look like this. So I know staff has prepared that, and if the commission is so inclined, I'd like to add that condition when we move this item, if we choose to support it. Just a couple other things. I have a little heartache about the conditions during construction, because this just seems to me like every construction project is a pain and it's awful, and I actually think that's for the most part what I hear people are most concerned about. After projects are built, people tend to like them more than when they're being built. So I'm concerned with all of the dirt coming out. I'm concerned about the concrete pours, and I don't know how we address that. I don't have a solution, but if anyone else on the commission does, I'm very amenable to considering those sorts of things. And just one last thing that came up during public comment, Ron Cook mentioned that there's a condition about no parking on WeHo streets, and this is a big one for me, and as a resident before I joined the commission, I brought it up, and I bring it up on almost every project. There's an absolute prohibition in our conditions for workers, construction workers, being able to park on the street while they're doing work here. They mean they can still bring the cement trucks and stuff like that, but the people working on the site will have to park elsewhere, off-site. And then there's a condition that says that once the people move in, that they can still, if they have a party one night and have their friends over for their birthday or something, they can still get those paper permits to park on the street in the neighborhood. They just can't get a permit for their own car because they'll have a spot underneath here. So there's no reason they should be parking on the street, taking up parking spots from those buildings like the one I live in that don't have parking spots because they were built in the 1920s. So I know Ron asked a question about how that was going to work, and that's how I understand it. And if staff believes I've interpreted that wrong, then by all means correct me. But I wanted to just address that because it was raised.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all the members that came out tonight to speak on behalf of this important item. I think I counted 16, maybe a couple didn't show up, but congratulations. I really appreciate that because it's seldom that we see that type of input, and I really appreciate it. I, too, am very impressed with the project. It is exemplary by all standards. It is quite beautiful, and I want to commend the architect for thinking in a way that I think I have not seen before on my time on the commission, which is short, but having followed the commission, seeing other projects, I haven't seen stuff like this in a while, so I want to commend that type of detail. I also want to commend my fellow Commissioner Calviero for, I think, inspiring me to write a short poem about how you get the landscape to the building or the building to the landscape. It was very beautifully put, and I'm looking forward to hearing your comments, actually, because they kind of are making me come to the middle a little bit, or where I think you will be going. I talk to a lot of younger residents in the city, and the number one thing they say to me is they cannot find an apartment or a place or anywhere to buy even to live here. That's a problem. And although the city of West Hollywood has for a long time made sure that we have affordable housing, or that we make sure we have housing as a requirement, you do remember in the reports that came out last year, we're like the one city in this actual area that are meeting are state-bound requirements. It's cities like Beverly Hills and other places that surround us, Los Angeles, for years that have created this crisis. So to see a building, a home, and I heard the words, there are only 10 homes left on this street, well, I feel for that statement. But that is 10 single family, however many people live their homes, versus now taking one of those homes and building 9, and including 10 with one low, very low income. That says a lot to me. And I think when you talk to people my age, I'm 33, and or lower, people want to live in buildings like this. People would aspire to live in buildings like this. And people want to live in West Hollywood. And right now, there is not a housing stock that allows them to do so. And that is why the state is taking away local control from cities, because they are not building housing stock. Former councilmember Steve Martin said we want stable owners in his public comment. Well, that is what this project is bringing. It is bringing stable owners, 10 of them actually, to the city. That is something to congratulate for, because we need to think about housing. Yes, one of the public commenters said they would love to see 100 units. I would too. I would love to see more units being built that bring in more people to the city, so people have a long-term residency here in the city of West Hollywood. People are saying they lived here for 27 years, 30 years, 20 years. That is what West Hollywood is about. And West Hollywood is going to go through some significant changes in the coming years. People talk about that, and people will see it. We are going to be building higher, as my fellow Commissioner John Ulschel talked about. People will move up, not New York status, or we don't want to start getting to the skyscraper narrative, because we all know what type of public panic that brings about, but we need more housing, and that project does this. And so I want to commend them. Also want to commend understanding that when we look at this project overall, it fits into all the narratives of our code that actually meets the legal requirements for what this body is actually able to approve. So I am prepared to support the project, in the ways in which that I think this is the exact type of thing that we need to be seeing come before us.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. Commissioner Caballero.
Yep, so I've already said what I needed to say basically, but I am in complete support of this building. I think it's beautifully designed. I think it has the level of social design experimentation that I'd like to see more of in the city. My issue with the project is that I would rather see this on a different site, a flat site. I really have an issue with its relationship to the landscape and the fact that we're cutting such a huge hole to receive this building. I think this building could have been as elegant and as well detailed if it responded to the natural topography of the site, and it could have been as successful. I'm on the fence about how I want to vote for it, but that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that we need to manage, construction mitigation and coordination is going to be a huge issue with this project on such a small street. And that's something that I know we're aware of, and I know that's part of our language already, but with this one, I think it's going to be very intensive. We have to be extra careful.
Thank you. I have a couple of quick questions for staff, just to address some of the questions that came up during public comment. One was in regard to the methodology for the height calculation. Can you just kind of enumerate quickly the parameters by which height is calculated in cases like these where there's a steep grade to the site?
Yeah, no problem. If I can pull up my PowerPoint presentation, I have a slide where I talk about the height measurement. Right, so the way the sloping site height measurement works here is that we measure 55 feet, which is the allowable height, at the front property line, and also at the rear property line at the existing grade. From there, you have a 1-to-2 rise-run ratio. So that's indicated by this line here. The code also stipulates that there's a perpendicular line that runs from the rear property line, since that's the higher side, and where the intersection is, where they meet, that's where the building envelope is, and the allowable building height to stay in that envelope area.
Okay. I know that you showed the slide during your presentation. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that that was kind of explained for members of the public. Thank you. There isn't a lot that hasn't been said already about this. I too share two specific concerns, especially first as regards the environmental impact of this particular project. It is, I think, does achieve enough to be a green project, but it seems a little silly to me that, you know, we have a system by which, you know, someone is able to get 90 green points and then, you know, use a ton of trucks to dig a giant hole out of the earth. So that's not a fact that's lost on me. To echo Commissioner Bass's comments earlier, and again, you know, I don't know that there's a lot we could do about it. We can talk about some conditions perhaps, but you know, we don't want the residents of this street to, we know what, I know what normal traffic is like. I can't imagine, you know, I know that there are a lot of projects happening on this street right now. So, you know, conditions during construction, cement trucks, trucks hauling dirt, things like parking are all things that I thought a lot about during kind of the public comments and commissioner comments about this particular project. I also agree with Commissioner Cavallero that it is, design-wise, I think it's pretty sensational. I do. And maybe that has something to do with my own aesthetic preferences. I like to think that I have good taste. But I do think that it is pretty exceptional. I also support Commissioner Bass's condition that if the concrete changes, that it has to come back to us. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because it's a material that is specific to the design, and I think really informs the design of the project. If staff or if anybody on commission has any suggestions in regard to what we might be able to do or what the developer might be able to do to mitigate things during construction, I'm certainly all ears. But
Can I, in regards to the concrete, what is it that exactly we're concerned about? Because
well, I think what we don't want is what I don't want is for this project to come back and be in, say, stucco or some other material.
Okay, yeah, that's a huge one, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one, obviously. But I think also, is it going to be all concrete, or is it going to be some combination of, as you discussed? I mean,
Well, we have confirmation from everybody that it's a concrete building. It's poured in place, board form concrete. So I can't imagine that this could switch to anything other than that easily without raising all sorts of red flags.
Well,
but what I do want to say in regards to the concrete, and this was my question back and forth with staff all this past week, is whether the structural engineer had sufficiently gone through the drawings to make sure that the sections that are shown in the package are actually buildable and actually will be able to sustain this building. If the structural changes and it starts modifying the elevation, then that causes a change in the building and it needs to come back. Staff, John Labib's office confirmed that they had taken this project beyond where they typically take a conceptual development of structural package, and confirmed that the sections that are in the package do reflect what will be built. So in regards to the concrete, yes, do we want to do a note? If it becomes something else, then we need to bring it back, but I think that would just happen naturally anyways, right?
Well,
because that's a significant change.
well, right. I think my argument would just be that if we don't anticipate there being that many changes, then it's not going to be a big deal if we condition it. Yep, that's fine. If you're in.
To define it, because
No.
in my mind, there's all sorts
No,
of
I
layers to that
appreciate
conversation.
Again, I just want to flag it. We've done it for other projects, and I just want to ensure that that's something that is held to.
But at the other projects is when the material changes. Well, this isn't just a material change. If he doesn't use no concrete, it's not going to be this building, and it would have to come back.
Right. But again, hence my point that it shouldn't be a big deal if we condition it that way then. I personally think that
it would be it could perhaps be overkill, but in that case,
I mean, if we feel better, let's do it.
out of an abundance of caution, that would be my preference.
I'm happy to support that. I also then would like to follow up on Commissioner Buckner's comment regarding how you define a large gathering. Like with the other project on West Knoll a few meetings ago, I had the commentary about in every individual unit in there had their own private rooftop space to do whatever they want, right? And so in regards to how you're defining large gathering, I know 10 p.m. is the cutoff, but is that 3 people, 5 people? I mean, I don't know how you define that within that context, but I mean, people are buying these condos, so therefore they have a legal right to go up to the top and have a gathering within the units. However, if it's after 10 p.m., it's a no-go, but if the words large social gathering are in there, what does that mean then? Because anyone could technically see a neighbor or whoever saying, oh, there are 3 people up there, they're having a large social gathering. What does that mean, right? So I just think we need to be clear about that.
Whose company three's a crowd?
Yeah, to say what Commissioner Bass said.
I didn't see any condition that we have here. It says so in the staff report, but there's not a condition, or I couldn't find it if there is one.
If you look at condition 8.14.
Which one is it? 8.1?
The 8.14 is where we limit the hours of the rooftop. And then the next sentence says large gathering or parties on the rooftop are prohibited.
Let's see.
Is there a level that the commission would feel comfortable with, or do you want us to suggest?
I don't know that I feel comfortable dictating what a large party is and is not. Wouldn't that be up to the board of the people who are actually, I don't know that I want to make a
Not how it works. The CCNRs are actually planned by the developer, and it's accepted by the association, and it's a big deal to change it. So I think it needs to be specified.
Well, I think in a recent meeting, we did decline to specify something in CCNR, but I'm not a condo owner, so I defer to the people who have experience with that.
I mean,
I'm happy to listen to staff's opinion on this.
We could potentially, given that each condo owner would want to have access at some point, it's difficult to say a blanket number of people up there, because then one person uses up all the spots, so to speak. We could say a resident can have no more than 4 guests. You know, granted, if everyone goes up there at the same time, then that could add up as well, but it is somewhat limiting without keeping any particular owner from actually accessing their open space at one time.
well, but this is a common open space upstairs.
It is.
In this
It is,
building.
but it's an amenity for all of the owners in the
Right.
building. Right.
But if it was a party, usually it's one homeowner that's having a gathering.
Right. So that's why they couldn't do
like
that.
the
So
other
they would
building.
have 4 guests per resident. Typically, not all of the residents are going to be up there with 4 guests at the same time. But I'm just pointing out that
So
it
4
could
guests per
be
residence,
cumulative.
and we have 11 units, so that would be 44 people?
There's 10 units.
10
correct?
units, so it'd be 40 people? I think that's too much.
We could also limit the hours of the use of the pool. on
Well,
the-
the
is
use is
limited.
already
Right,
limited.
so that should take care of it.
And I'm not really comfortable with a number.
Yeah, I'm not either.
If we did 4 guests, I mean, that's 5 people, I think that's 50 people. Because and if there are 2 people who live there and they have 5 guests, now we're at 60 people. So I'm not comfortable with a number, because then if it's one person who lives there and they can have 4 guests, then when they have, you know, their birthday party or an afternoon with friends, then do they only get 4 people, or do they get to count the guests of all of their neighbors as
Well,
well?
and what if you
So
have
I
a-
think it gets confusing, and I think the hours is probably sufficient for
I
me.
agree. What if they want to have a community meeting on their roof? I mean, I'm not comfortable with the number right now.
We'll see.
As for the construction mitigation issue, I've racked my brain for a week now trying to come up with something. The only thing that I can come up with is restricting the hours that these sorts of activities, the excavation and the cement trucks can come, but that seems arbitrary to me.
But they're already restricted, are they not?
You are restricted to citywide by ordinance to do construction during certain times. I'm just wondering if we limit that, or if we could limit that, because a common theme we heard in public comment tonight was how busy the street is during commute times. So maybe we don't want this street to be filled with cement trucks and dirt hauling during commute times.
Right, but wouldn't that then prolong the number of times, the
Would
number of trips that
lengthen
the trucks have to make?
the number of
I don't
months
want,
that this would
I don't
happen.
think people want that either. I mean, it's a fair
It was not a perfect solution. It was the only one I could come up with, though.
No, I get it. I've been thinking about it a lot too. I don't know that there's anything that we can.
I mean, you know, this street is, I mean, I feel for the residents of this street. I mean, when you look at the number of projects on West Knoll, there are a significant amount. We are seeing another one in March. And granted, we don't say or dictate how those things come to us and the way in which they get put onto our agendas, in the ways in which it's scheduled out. But, you know, it's like a catch-22 when it comes to you're building these sites for housing, and people have a right to build on the sites that they own, and wherever that comes in the schedule, it occurs. And one of the commenters in support of the project, I mean, and I agree, when people say West Hollywood is traffic city, I agree, but it's not West Hollywood traffic. It's because we have Sunset, Santa Monica, Melrose, and Fountain, if you actually ever want to regulate Fountain, and then Beverly and parts of it that come through us as a major gateway to the west side. So, I mean, and with Uber, Lyft, and Waze, and however that happens, I mean, it adds to a significant impact, but I wouldn't be supportive of putting hours on it.
There's a motion. Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment at this time? We have a motion.
For me,
I'll articulate the motion.
can I ask one last
The
question?
motion is to approve the staff recommendation, which would include Adam's condition with respect to the bait and switch on the contract, on the concrete.
Thank you, Commissioner Altschul. Commissioner Caballero, you have another question?
Yeah, just to satisfy this whole construction issue, which I'm equally concerned, and also understand that, like, even limiting the hours for cement trucks will exponentially raise the cost of this project and make it even worse for the neighborhood, I think. What kind of construction mitigation and coordination does the city have in place already that this project will follow? We know that the project is at least a year to year and a half before it can break ground anyway. So hopefully this other project will be done and clear. But typically in this type of situation, what would the city do to manage a project like this?
Yeah, I just want to, and I'm sure the commission is already aware of it, there's condition 5.6, which does require the construction mitigation plan. And it does deal with trucks and timing and routes and haul routes and all of that. Typically, it's pretty loose right here because, as you said, there are multiple developments going on at the same time. It gives code enforcement the ability to coordinate these individually as they're coming in so that they don't have 3 or 4 projects all hauling on the same day, and that they're able to separate those and limit hours appropriately and yet, you know, allow construction to continue in an orderly way.
And it
are the
does
neighbors?
work. It does work. It's worked on the Doheny project where the pumpkin patch used to be. The timing of that was wonderful, and the traffic managed to flow, I think, in a very reasonable fashion.
Are the neighbors kept informed?
Yes, they are actually. We are posting and mailing those.
Then I'm good with this.
All right, let's call the question.
Can we read into the record the condition that we're adding, please?
Yes.
Okay, the condition is, at the applicant's expense, the project shall return to the Planning Commission Design Review Subcommittee, and if subcommittee determines, to the full commission for review and approval of any modification to the exterior design, including finished materials and exterior design elements beyond the design considered by the Planning Commission on February 7th, 2019. Any changes to the building construction type will constitute a major amendment and shall comply with the section 19.62.070 of the West Hollywood Municipal Code.
Thank you. I'm going to defer to our secretary.
And the motion passes, noting Vice Chair Carvalho voting no, Commissioner Herman Gunner recused. The resolutions the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about a waiver of fees.
That's the exciting part of
Thank
this.
you. Again, appreciate you keeping noise to a minimum as you exit the auditorium. So we are going to be moving on to our next item, item 10C, 8550 Santa Monica Boulevard.
Question to staff.
Commissioner Altrell has a question for staff.
Why is this not the subject of an MCUP hearing by the director?
This is for off-site sales.
I see, and those hearings are only for on-site consumption.
I'm sorry, I
Sales.
did not. Yes.
Again, appreciate you keeping noise to a minimum as you exit the auditorium. We're just keeping this meeting going here. Thank you. We will have our staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Antonio Castillo, Associate Planner with the Planning Division. The proposal before you this evening is a request for a conditional use permit to allow the sale of beer and wine for off-site consumption associated with Sprouts Farmers Market, a full-service grocery store. The grocery store will be located on the first floor of an approximate 42,000 square foot multi-tenant commercial development that is currently under construction and in its final stages of construction. The grocery store will operate 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and request to sell beer and wine during all hours of operation, in addition to a complete selection of grocery store items in a typical supermarket category. The sales floor area will be on the ground floor with the market itself will have a basement which will be used only for food prep and for storage. This CUP request will not change the interior layout or the exterior elevations of the building currently under construction. The sales area for beer and wine is proposed to be located at the rear of the store on shelves, end caps, and in a cooler, with a combined square footage of approximately 125 square feet. I would like to bring your attention to condition 3.10 in the draft staff report. This condition would prohibit the sale of individual containers of beer and wine smaller than 750 milliliters. The applicant would like to request to consider allowing single containers. Sprouts is requesting to be able to sell large single containers of 22 ounces for their sale of craft beer. This would be 22 ounces, which are larger than your typical 12-ounce container. Staff received only one correspondence for this item, and that was from a neighbor who expressed support for the application. The proposed sale of beer and wine for off-site consumption is consistent with the general plan as well as the criteria for off-site sales set forth in the West Hollywood Municipal Code. The use is not anticipated to cause new or exacerbate any public nuisance in the vicinity. And the use will serve a public convenience without causing undue negative impacts to the surrounding neighborhood and sensitive uses in the vicinity. And the project has been conditioned to ensure that operations of the site are consistent with the city's goals. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the CUP as proposed by the applicant.
Thank you, Tony. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Bass?
Yeah, so they're requesting to eliminate condition 3.10. Help me, this is one of the first times I've done this type of a hearing. Can they still get let's say we leave 3.10 in there. Can they still get a special permit for certain events to sell something different? Like, let's say on Pride, they wanted to sell something different just for the one day. Could they do that, or is this permanently, they can never do that?
Yeah, this condition would prohibit anything smaller than the 750 milliliter size, regardless of what their ABC license would be. Their entitlement would prohibit them from selling that
Thank
product.
you.
How many fluid ounces is that for those of us using the imperial system?
750?
That's my question,
750
too.
would be a wine bottle, a standard
Okay.
wine bottle.
So a full, like 4 glasses of wine, a standard size wine bottle. It's 4 glasses.
Isn't
Okay.
pavilions under that same restriction? They don't sell splits of any size.
I don't know. A 22-ounce beer is a...
Like, people can take that and walk out on the street and drink on the street.
That's why the
Well,
prohibition.
they could also take a bottle of wine out on the street and drink it. I mean, it's called a 40
They
ounce.
could, but not, I don't know.
Anyway, questions before we go into discussion? We have any more questions for staff about this
That was
item?
well, I have a question. 22 ounces, first of all, I think that across the way there's Trader Joe's, they aren't allowed to sell individual small bottles of anything. Is that correct? So why?
I don't think that's true.
Really?
I mean, I don't know about that specific Trader Joe's, but I know that my Trader Joe's, which is also, well, it's nearby, is there, I can buy...
A bottle of, one
20
small bottle of beer?
Not small, but a 22 ounce is not a regular bottle of beer. It's almost like it's like 2.5 servings of beer, essentially.
Really, I don't drink beer, so I don't know.
Right. The condition included is a standard condition that we've applied for other projects, applications.
And they're requesting that the minimum be 22 ounces, correct?
Correct. Among their products, they want to be able to sell, I think they call them bombers.
Bombers, okay.
Correct, for
Okay.
craft beer.
I know what that is, and I'm not a millennial, so it's fine. All right, any other questions for staff at this time? Good, all right, we will move into public comments. Wait, we have an appellant's presentation. I'm sorry. Sometimes these items, my apologies. Does the appellant want to give a presentation?
Applicant.
Yeah, it's listed as the applicant. Hello.
Good evening, Commissioners. Terry Dickerhoff. I live in Los Angeles. I wouldn't call what I have to say really a presentation. I'm here to answer any questions, and I can talk about Sprouts a little bit for those of you who aren't familiar with the grocery store. But just to address specifically the size issue, I believe that 750 milliliters is just under 26 ounces, if my conversions were correct earlier today when I did them. So what we are asking for, instead of 25.63 ounces, to have 22 ounces. Not everything we sell in the bomber size or the craft beer size would be at 22 ounces. We have some that are 22, some 23, and some 26. So it's just part of our standard product package that we like to have, especially with craft beers they are very popular. They're typically more expensive, though. It's not something you're going to go in and buy, the Colt 45. I don't know what they cost these days, but whatever the cost is, and take that out into the parking lot. I mean, their price point is a higher price point, so it's not really cost effective to buy that if your sole intention is to just buy it and take it into the parking lot. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So at your other Sprouts markets, you don't have this condition, and you do sell smaller bottles in the 750 milliliters?
It just depends on the jurisdiction. So we do have this condition in some of the grocery stores, and we don't in others. And some, we've asked for 22 ounces, and they've granted us the 22 ounces. So it just depends on the city.
So it's not a regular thing in all of your markets?
A regular thing to not have it or to have it?
To not have this restriction?
It's not, more stores than not do not restrict the size, but we do have the restriction in some stores. There are some jurisdictions that just don't allow single sales regardless, and we abide by that.
Okay. So I think I heard staff say that this is a general restriction that we have with these CUPs for in our city, is that correct?
That's correct. I do want to point out, though, that we have made modifications in the past. I know that Bevmo at the Gateway Center at La Brea also sells craft beers, and so I think an exception was made in that case to allow them to sell those products.
Bevmo. And so if we do this, then the other stores could come and ask for a modification of their CUP, and we have more stores selling smaller.
They could do that now. It wouldn't change it whether this was granted or not. They
Right.
would still have that opportunity.
What % of your business in the stores where you do allow, would you say, your alcohol business, total alcohol? And if this is a ballpark, but would you say that the 22 to 26 ounces constitute of your total alcohol sales?
I don't know of the exact number. I mean, the alcohol sales overall range between 2 and 5% of the
right.
overall sales. I would say it's probably not a huge percentage within that percentage.
Right.
Just because it's a very specific market that's looking for the bomber, the growler, the larger bears.
Like less than 1%?
I would
think
say
that's probably
probably.
fair. I mean, it's a leading question, but I'm very familiar with kind of the alcohol offerings, and I'm just curious.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, because the price point is a bit higher, that it doesn't appeal to everyone.
Sure. Thank you.
And I vary that because of the size and the location of where this new Sprouts will be, you will have a lot of foot traffic that might be interested in this size of purchase because it's not sold anywhere else in the vicinity, correct? Whole Foods doesn't sell growlers or bombers or whatever they're called.
No.
Trader Joe's definitely doesn't, and Pavilions doesn't.
Pavilions does not.
So you're the one location within that whole vicinity that would sell this type of product to a market, I am assuming, that would be ready to purchase it.
Right.
Thank you.
For your other locations, how about the one that is on La Brea, just right outside of our city?
That one, we do not have a restriction on singles sales.
Because that's like one block outside of West Hollywood.
That's exactly right, 912, 915. Mm-hmm. And we just did one at 1302 La Brea, which is much further away, but that one, we do not have that restriction either.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you for changing it, David. I don't think we have any other questions, but we'll call you back up if we do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We do have public comment. George Biarski.
Hello, if anybody else. George Boyarski, reside near WeHo. I mean, I don't see much question here. Food stores, groceries, everywhere sell alcohol. I don't see much difference from, buying a smaller bottle and a larger bottle, whether you're going to consume it in the parking lot. And the only thing is, I don't know why grocery stores would commit so much space if only about 1% of their revenues came from the sale of alcohol. But in general, I don't see this request as different from what goes on now. The wine, for example, the packaged, paper packaged wine is available all over in smaller containers and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant does have the opportunity to rebut. Is there anything that you want to rebut at this time? No, you're not obligated to, but it is your prerogative. Okay. Yes. Thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and we can move into discussion.
I am from Wisconsin. This is a natural occurrence where I am from. And I would argue in Wisconsin it is more than 1% of the supermarkets sales. So I would assume it might be here as well, and I'm prepared to support staff's recommendation and move forward. You said I couldn't hear. I'm so sorry.
He said as it is with the restriction.
You're supporting staff's recommendation, which includes 3.10. Are you the?
Are we discussing moving?
No, the motion, to
there is
recite the motion.
There's no motion right now, but you said you're willing.
There is a motion on the floor. Commissioner Erickson, you moved it. Can you state your motion, please?
Yes.
Yes. Hold on one second. Let me find. So I was prepared to move staff's recommendation. And
Okay.
that's it.
So that's your motion.
Yes.
And I'll second that.
I am actually prepared to support staff's recommendation, but I'm okay with Sprouts selling 22 to 26 ounce. I'm not gonna say I regularly consume them, but some of these bombers, like there's one called Love Child by Boulevard Brewery in Kansas City. It's available at Bristol Farms if anybody's interested. It's like $27, and I mean, you would not want to drink the whole thing. It would not put you in a good way. So I am prepared to. I'm actually okay with removing that particular restriction. This is not something you're gonna, take it and chug it in your car. I don't see that being an issue. So
The motion is to move staff.
correct, but everybody hasn't had a chance to discuss, so.
I don't drink, but I would support the chair's position of removing 3.10.
I support your position.
I am happy to remove my motion and support that. I'm neutral either way. I see this, so I'm happy to remove my motion currently on the
To
floor.
remove your motion, you mean amend your motion?
Amend my motion to include Chair
And I'll second the
Jones's
I'll second the
amendment.
amendment.
Do we have any other discussion on this item? So just to be clear, the motion is to support staff's recommendation with the changing or removing condition 3.10 so that the minimum threshold for alcohol sales is 22 ounces. Thus stated, is that okay with staff?
They could sell singles with the minimum of 22.
22 ounces. We will call the question.
You just want to replace 750 milliliters with 22 ounces?
Yes.
Got it.
Great, thank you.
Does that number of milliliters equal 22 ounces?
It's 26.5.
So 22 ounces is the minimum?
22 ounces is the minimum.
Is the
correct.
minimum that can be sold. Okay.
And the motion passes, noting Commissioner Buckner voting no, Commissioner Hoopengarter recused. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you. All right, moving on. So we already did item 11, new business. Item 12, unfinished business, there is none. Item 13, excluded consent calendar, there is none. Items from staff, item 14A, planning manager's update.
None this evening.
Thank you, David. Moving on to item 15, public comment.
Actually, we have two. Our first one is George Biarski.
Thank you. Again, please state your name and city of residence when you come up to the podium.
I hope the commission understands that putting on a size limitation will probably remove the
George,
sale
if you
of
can come-
dessert saucers, which are very hard to get anyway. Sorry. George Briarski, resident WeHo. As you all know, I am given to verbal flourishes. Part of that is my personality. Part of it is, given a 2 or 3 minute time period, sort of trying to throw out a crumb and maybe even get a trail of crumbs. At the last meeting, I did a couple of those swoops. I just want to come back because because looking at it, the thing of like West Hollywood turning into from a city of light to a city of gloom is way over the top and really doesn't involve the basic questions that are going on, which are livability, the human interaction with the surroundings, the variety, and all those factors. And that's to me, that's more of the point in the end. The fact that in our neighborhood community, the spaces that are being developed were previously occupied by one-story, one-family units, which didn't present any problems to the vanishing of the sky or the sense of place. I guess that's part of the process. On the other hand, for something like, my reference to we are flying the flag of non-affordable housing, if you can think of a better flag, please. We're certainly not flying the flag of housing that is affordable for people who are trying to stay in the middle class, people who are trying to raise families. And as far as support for subsidized housing or for those who have sort of fallen out of the middle class, I don't see that happening. I think there's still a lottery for the people waiting in line. I think that there's this constant confusion between the necessity for units and the necessity for affordable units for those that are disadvantaged, and there's no discussion ever about affordable units for people who don't have enough money for a condominium, for example. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Martin?
Thank you. Steve Martin, West Hollywood, and I haven't been here for a while, and I just want to say I was very impressed by the level of discussion and interaction with both the public and the commission. It's really good to see everybody so engaged here. The commission goes through cycles, and I think you guys are on an up cycle. I was also impressed the fact that the chair knew what a growler was. That was that's an accomplishment. But I do appreciate the fact that Stacey Jones was taking a lot of effort in regard to this alternate issue, which I know is a very esoteric one, but it is one that's important to people who come to meetings and then find out they're being canceled, and developers that are coming to meetings not being canceled. And my suggestion would be, if you're not satisfied, have Mike Jenkins or Christy Hogan come here and just talk to them and clear the air and see, because there may just very well be sort of a message to Garcia kind of situation where things are not being communicated in a way that really satisfactory to you. And I know that you guys have the best interest of the public at heart. Having said all that, why I really came here tonight, I will be one of the only speakers on Measure B that's probably not on the payroll of the developer. And I'm speaking against Measure B. I'm hoping that people will vote no on the Arts Club, because it's really setting an incredibly bad precedent for how development happens in West Hollywood. As you know, the Arts Club has received a 100-foot bonus, height bonus, than what it was allowed under the general plan and the Sunset Specific Plan. It was also given a quadruple FAR. It was given an additional 88,000 square feet. To quote Councilmember John Heilman, this approval stood the Sunset Specific Plan on its head and repudiated it. It essentially made the general plan completely irrelevant. We just let developers set whatever standards they want with whatever little bangles and beads they dangle before the public. What we have here is of someone who spent a couple $100,000 to have people go and knock on residents' doors and giving them false news, fake news, one-sided information, You know, and it even showed up in the staff report, because the staff says, well, on the first floor, there's going to be a bistro. And that bistro is going to have live entertainment and live music. Well, we know that's not a bistro. That's a nightclub. And they didn't go around knocking on doors and tell Bobby Ettrick and my other friends that they were putting a nightclub 50 feet from their house. It's a pig in a poke. If you do the math, if we got 2,200 square feet, which is maybe 2/3 of this area here, for an art gallery and a performance space, and if that 2,200 square feet was worth $10 million, then the remaining 86,000 square feet is worth close to $350 million. That's not a fair trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all for our public comment, David? Thank you. Item 16, items from commissioners.
I just wanted to say, I know he's not here anymore, but I wanted to thank Paul Hancock, who came and spoke, for his service to our country. I tried to say it after he spoke in public comment, but I thought his story was very beautiful, and I just want to acknowledge his service that he did, and he's now a West Hollywood resident. I thought that was a very beautiful story.
Any other commissioner comments at this time? No? All right, well, with that, we will move to adjourn this meeting. Please know that our next meeting is Thursday, February 21st, right here at 6:30 p.m. Thank you to everyone who came out this evening to comment.